Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063, The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live for the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Ian is here today. Hello, Ian.
Hello, how are you?
Outstanding. So, boy, I tell you, yesterday was a shockingly entertaining sports night. I mean, we got all kinds of stuff. I was watching the World Series, but we've got all kinds of stuff going on right now, which is very, very exciting. And so, yeah, I mean, I didn't think I'd get into. It's funny. We had Chad on the show on Friday, and I said it part of the hot seat. I said to Chad, I go, "What's your interest level in the World Series?" And Chad was like, not very high. And I was like, me too. Like, I should be excited about the World Series. And I found myself watching it Friday night, even though I had no excitement before it started. And I enjoyed the World Series last night. But the big story, of course, is football. And I want to start on Anthony Richardson, because what Anthony Richardson has done, this is an NFL thing now. He's kind of divided the NFL discourse river to a certain extent. And look, the tap out with Anthony Richardson, I've got nothing to say about that that's like a defensive Richardson. I mean, number one, if he was tired, he should be conditioned enough to not get tired. Number two, if he was tired and he had to tap out, lie about it. Say, oh, yeah, my cleat got caught and I couldn't. That's something you don't get up there and say, yeah, I was tired. I needed a sub. Like, dude, you're not a receiver. You're the quarterback. That was bad. And I'm not going to defend it, even though I'm a big Anthony Richardson guy. But if you remember, I absolutely loved Anthony Richardson before the NFL draft. In fact, if I was the Titans, I probably would be calling Indianapolis right now, seeing if they'd be interested in talking about Anthony Richardson, because that's how much I love Anthony Richardson's talent. I think it is just off the charts. You guys all want Josh Allen, and you guys all want Mahomes, and you guys all want these great quarterbacks, but there's a reason why Mahomes didn't go number one. There were issues in his game, and Andy Reid got it worked out. There is a reason Josh Allen didn't go number one. He was a 50% passer at Wyoming. So what you have to do is you have to take the raw talent and build it into something great, which takes us to the discourse divide. On one hand, there's the group of people that say he needs to develop. He's played 10 games in the NFL. He's 22 years old. He got something like, 12 starts in college? He got 12 starts in college, and you drafted him knowing this. Again, I talked at length before the 2023 draft about my plan when it came to the Titans and drafting Anthony Richardson. And the number one thing we would do is go to the podium that night and announce that Ryan Tannehill was starting at quarterback. That is the number one thing we would have done. And I'd have sat Richardson for the entire season until, maybe you're out of the race or something like that. Might play in some fourth quarters, but he's not going to play. Then year two, turn around, hand the ball to Jonathan Taylor every play. Would have gotten him a tight end. They didn't. Mo Alley Cox has been their tight end the entire time. So that's one side. You took this developmental prospect that you knew you had to develop. And here you are 10 games in and you're sitting him on the bench after you got him hurt last year at 22 years old. So that's the first group. The second group is he sucks. He wasn't good at Florida. He didn't complete a lot of passes. They didn't win a lot of games. They need to go to Joe Flacco because Joe Flacco gives them a chance to win. And what's come of this discussion is this whole idea about how long do you wait on a quarterback? Because there are stories like Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold and Geno Smith. Guys who failed as starters with the teams that drafted them because the teams that drafted them are stupid. In both cases with Darnold and Smith, it was the Jets, a notoriously stupid organization. And then there was the Browns, and they're stupid too. I mean, even Ryan Tannehill was a guy, he can't do it. Let's let him go. The whole league thought he was a backup, and then all of a sudden he's in the AFC title game. Then there's a guy like Josh Allen, who was awful for 2 years statistically. I mean, awful. His numbers almost mirror Will Levis's numbers exactly. And he became a superstar. And that brings me to the Titans and the Titans side of this discussion, which is, I think the Titans are going to need to do some real soul searching here. Because when it comes to them and Will Levis, they need to figure out how much of Will Levis's issues are because he's too young, he doesn't have the experience, he's learning to play in the NFL, he's, again, inexperienced, the difference between inexperienced and stupid. And how much of his issues are because of you? As in, how much of it, and let's just call it what it is, Will Levis has been disappointment. How much of it is Will Levis and how much of it is you? And in both the case with the Colts and Levis, I don't have an answer to tell you. Like, I can't sit here and say the problem is the Titans. And that if you put Will Levis, like, let's use the Rams as an example. Because a lot of people thought that the Rams, with Liam Cohen there, that the Rams really would have liked Will Levis. Well, if he had gone to the Rams and he had sat on the bench for a year and a half behind Matthew Stafford, would Will Levis roll the football on the ground to the other team? I don't know the answer to that. But that's the soul searching that the Titans have to do. This time last year, Will Levis was coming off of one of the best, really one of the 3 best debuts in NFL history. Him, Mariota, and Fran Tarkenton. 4 touchdown passes in their first starts. And I know Will Levis has legit NFL talent. And yeah, he might be a total dope, but so is Jared Goff. And look at Jared Goff. Jared Goff with a good team, Super Bowl. Jared Goff with a bad team, worst in the league. Jared Goff with a good team again, on the doorstep of the Super Bowl. Jared Goff's not the problem, and Jared Goff's also not the answer. If Detroit got another average level quarterback in there, if Jared Goff left, they'd be fine. But again, this brings me back to how much of your quarterback problems are your fault. These guys get drafted and we're like, you know what? This guy's not playing very well. He sucks. Let's look at the Jets. Let's go through the Jets' last 4 starting quarterbacks. Geno Smith, he sucks. And then he didn't. Sam Darnold, he sucks. And then he didn't. Zach Wilson, he sucks. Now he's a backup, but we'll see if he ever gets another chance. And Aaron Rodgers, all-time great quarterback, league MVP, first ballot Hall of Famer, and now he sucks. So how much of that is you and how much of that is your quarterback? And again, I don't have the answer, especially when it comes to the Titans. I mean, every Pittsburgh Steeler fan told me that the Titans got a steal in Mason Rudolph, even though their team, the Steelers, weren't interested in bringing him back. But Mason Rudolph played those, 4 starts last year and didn't turn the football over? And they said, you watch Mason Rudolph. He's not bad, Jared. I've seen Mason Rudolph play the last 2 weeks. It's the same as watching Will Levis. The horrendously stupid, don't throw that interception. He does it. Like, it's crazy. Both guys stink roughly the same amount. Can't tell you for certain that if Indy had treated Anthony Richardson the way I wanted Anthony Richardson developed, if they had done that, I can't tell you that it would have worked. I don't know that. But they drafted Anthony Richardson, and as I said, I would have run to the podium and said, Gardner Minshew is our starting quarterback. Anthony Richardson will not play in 2023. I would have said it. Instead, Dopey, who owns the team, was, Well, I mean, I think we're gonna have to play him right away. I think the way you get better in the league is by Michael Jordan played and he'll play. I think that is almost verbatim what he said. I'm kidding. But again, they did the exact opposite of everything I would have done. And now they've ruined him. They've ruined him. Once you bench a guy, you don't go back. No matter what you say, you can never undo it. It's like cheating on somebody. You can't undo it. Maybe you can get them to forgive you, but they'll never forget it. And again, this brings me back to the Titans and to everybody else in the league that doesn't have Patrick Mahomes. How much of it is because these guys in the NFL don't know what they're doing? And how much of it is the fact that some of these guys just stink? Have you noticed which organizations have the good quarterbacks? Andy Reid, think he's pretty smart. The Ravens, the Packers, the well-respected organizations. Have you noticed who can't develop a quarterback? The Titans, the Cardinals. Well, Jaden Daniels is awesome, right? And Washington literally finally, after years and years and years of their fans begging, expunged the stink from their organization of their owner. If Dan Snyder was running the Commanders, I don't know if Jaden Daniels would be having the same amount of success. So that's where we're starting today. How much of this is the Titans? How much of this is Will Levis? And I'm just going to tell you right now, I don't know the answer. Now, there is one thing that I will tell you that when it comes to the Titans and Levis and who's more at fault, that it kind of makes me lean the needle one way. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game. Oh, Window Nation. I absolutely love talking about Window Nation because right now, if you buy 2 windows, you will get 2 windows for free. Plus, you'll pay nothing for 24 months. And hurry up because this sale ends October 31st. So I love telling you about Window Nation because when I had Window Nation out to my home, I had a check right there ready to write. I said, okay, tell me what I need to replace. And they said, no. Your windows are okay. You don't need our energy efficient models. But some of you do. In fact, I've got a new home, and my new home is actually an old home, and I might need the energy efficient models. So again, right now, buy 2 windows, get 2 free, and you'll pay nothing for 24 months. So schedule an in-home estimate by calling their experts at 866-90Nation or at windownation.com. That's 866-90Nation, Window Nation at windownation.com.
On 2nd and 6, fake to Jacobs. Uh-oh, he's got him. Willis to a wide open Jaden Reed. Reed takes it all the way to the Jaguars' 17-yard line, a 49-yard catch and run.
This is the first time they ran this play. Jaden Reed makes it look like he was going to block, and all of a sudden he bursts across the field. Malik Willis was waiting for him to pop open, and he throws a beautiful ball to Jaden Reed for a huge gain for the Packers.
Ian, how about Malik Willis? This is not the Malik Willis. We used to call him Mustinks because of how bad he was.
He had a few, tuck it and run situations where maybe he probably could have looked off, but he looked okay.
I mean, Malik Willis last year with the Titans got in the game, and he, in a 2-minute drill, dove back in bounds. Malik Willis got booed at home. And Derrick Henry and DeAndre and Will Levis had to chastise the fans. Don't do that, fans. What was it? Will Levis said, let's bring a better attitude next time. Screw you, Will Levis. Don't tell the fans what to do. But again, it's like, who is that on the Green Bay Packers? This has to be discussed, especially when we're having the discussion about how much of the quarterback struggles are your fault and how much of the quarterback struggles are the quarterback's fault. Malik Willis looked like a total bum for 2 years. He looked like a bum. He sucked. Now, he looked a little bit better in training camp this year, but the Titans didn't see enough from him in training camp to keep him, or at least they gave him away for free. They gave him to Green Bay for a bag of balls. The 7th round pick that the Titans acquired for Green Bay, if you look up the draft trade chart, has a value of 1.1. It's the same kind of pick that you traded Cleveland this offseason in order to be able to acquire Leroy Watson. So you got nothing really in return from Malik Willis. And let me just say for the record, I was not happy about that trade. But then Malik goes to Green Bay, and he becomes one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the NFL. Malik is 2-0 as a starter. He won the game in relief on Sunday. His completion percentage is 74%. He has 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a quarterback rating of 130. So somebody needs to tell me what happened to Malik Willis and what happened to the Malik Willis that we watched. The Malik Willis who getting a guy off the street and bringing him in to play quarterback the week of the game wasn't just a better option. It was infinitely a better option. What happened to that guy? Is it as simple as Malik has a better coach and so now he's a good quarterback? Like Malik goes to a better organization. And again, it's not like the Green Bay Packers have every position with a superstar. I mean, these receivers, Jaden Reed and Devontae, is it Deontay Wicks?
Wicks, yeah. And then they have the Christian Watson kid and Romeo Dobbs.
Yeah, they're fine.
Tucker Kraft.
They're fine. But it's not like when they had Devontae Adams. I mean, it's not like they have A.J. Brown out there. You know, you can explain to me, hey, what happened to Jalen Hurts? Well, Jalen Hurts has Saquon Barkley, Devontae Smith, and A.J. Brown and Dallas Goedert. Makes sense to me. Jalen Hurts has one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. Good left tackle, Hall of Fame center, probably Hall of Fame right tackle. That makes sense for me. But Malik? What's happened to Malik? So again, when it comes to this whole discussion about, why are these quarterbacks failing? I think it was John McClain said, and a lot of people have said, if the Houston Texans did not hit a Hail Mary against the Indianapolis Colts in the last game of the 2022 season, the Houston Texans would have had the number 1 overall pick and would have drafted Bryce Young out of Alabama over C.J. Stroud. And right now, everybody hears that and goes, oh! But my question is Bryce Young's failure because Carolina is one of the worst organizations in the NFL? I mean, think about this. Carolina's quarterbacks in 2022 were Baker Mayfield, PJ Walker, and Sam Darnold. So 2 of the 10 best quarterbacks this year in the NFL were on that team, and it got every single person there fired. So again, when I'm sitting here looking at the Titans and I'm looking at Levis and I see Rudolph go in there and stink up the joint, and I watch Levis stink up the joint, and we talk about Levis sucks and this was a bust and that's a bad quarterback and and I look at Anthony Richardson and I see Indianapolis do the exact opposite of everything that I would have done. I keep saying, how much is you and how much is the team? And then we have an example of it right in front of our eyes in Malik Willis. Adam Vingan asked me, he goes, well, how much, when I was dogging on Rand Carthon and Brian Callahan for the fact they gave away Malik for a bag of footballs, now Malik looks like a good quarterback. And he said, well, did you ever see Malik look like this with the Titans? No, that's the problem. If Brian Callahan's a quarterback guru and Rand Carthon's a good general manager and Chad Brinker in there, if those guys are good at their jobs, they should be able to get Malik to play the best he can play. They could not get Malik to play the best he could play, but Green Bay can? Somebody out here help me out. Like, this is a huge red flag when it comes to evaluating the Titans' ability to move forward with the guys in charge. The fact that Levis looks awful. Rudolph looks awful. But the guy they got rid of for 1 point on the trade chart might be their best quarterback, given the way he's played. And I know Malik's not better than Will Levis. So what's happening here is Malik's got good coaching and a better system, and all of a sudden Malik looks like he knows what he's doing. Will Levis threw for 95 yards against the 32nd ranked defense in the NFL. So somebody help me out with all of this. Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Trey's going to kick us off today. Thank you for calling. Thank you for waiting. Trey, go ahead.
Hey, how you doing, bud?
Good.
Hey, I wanted to say I believe it's 90% Will Levis, 10% Callahan. I say that because if a quarterback or anybody that's on that field doesn't have a designated skill set, like nobody knows what that this guy has. And they've been going on and on and on. Oh, he can work on that. He can work on that. No.
What do you mean you don't know what his skill set is? He can throw the ball down the field. He can push the ball outside the numbers. He's athletic. Like, what are you talking about? Like, you've never watched this guy play quarterback before?
I've seen him play quarterback. I'm talking about, footwork, the things that coach has been saying.
Well, that's not skill set. Those are mechanics.
Is that a skill set?
No, those are his mechanics.
Yeah, those are mechanics. That's not skill. Malik Willis has skill.
Okay, I'm going to let you go, Trey. So, again, I don't know what he's talking about. Will Levis has talent. Before we sit here and we say, Will Levis sucks. He's always was going to suck. He's terrible. He's bad. Before we do that, Will Levis has talent. It's like some moron tweeted me today and was like, Anthony Richardson should have never been picked in the first round in the first place. I'm like, Anthony Richardson is a legitimate first round talent. He's like 6'4", 240 pounds. He runs faster than Cam Newton. He can flick his wrist and the ball goes 50 yards down the field. Anthony Richardson leads the NFL in yards per completion. Think about it. That's because he can fire bombs down the field like nobody else can. Anthony Richardson has so much talent. It's like Mariota. Mariota's not a starting quarterback in the NFL. Mariota's not that good. Mariota was a first-round talent at 6'3", 220 pounds, with the athleticism that he had and the accuracy he displayed in college and the fact that he was the Heisman Trophy winner. Marcus was a legitimate high-end prospect. Jameis Winston was a great prospect. This idea, Will Levis, he got no talent. Yes, he does. He can throw the ball down the field as well as anybody in the league. He can push the ball outside the numbers. He can sit on the opposite hash mark and throw it 25 yards, throw a post route the outside the numbers on the other side of the field, and it's a flick of the wrist. Not everybody can do that. Mason Rudolph sure as hell can't do it. So give me a freaking break with this. I don't think Will Levis has a skill set. So I think it's 90% Will Levis. Will Levis has real talent. Then why was Will Levis not this bad last year? Somebody help me out with that. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number at 615-737-1025. Stillman & Company, 1025, 1062 the game.
Ryan, when it comes to the young quarterbacks in this league, we just saw a situation in Indy with Anthony Richardson being the bench. You've been around the game for a while in quarterbacks. Do you feel like there is less patience, or does that kind of vary from organization to organization in terms of how they are setting up a quarterback for success?
How long you guys want to sit here?
I was going to say you probably have a great long answer on that.
Oh, I think there's a lot of things that go into that. There is, and I think before I speak on any of it, I think every situation is a little bit different. And every player and organization has different ways they go about it. So I'm not speaking for anybody, but I just think there's a couple of factors at play for some of the things that happen in the league. I think one, the quarterback position is the toughest position to play in sports. It's really difficult to play quarterback, and then it's even more difficult to play at a level that everybody wants their quarterback to play at. The top 4 or 5 guys in the league, everybody's searching for that.
That was Brian Callahan today. He actually said some very insightful stuff about quarterback development and why these quarterbacks fail. And then I hear him say these things. I'm like, he's bright. And then I see them give away Malik Willis for a bag of footballs, and Malik Willis go to the Packers and look better than the quarterbacks that they have. And I'm like, okay, somebody help me understand here. Let's go back to your phones. Howie in Houston is up next here on our program. Howie, thank you for waiting. Go ahead.
Hey, Jared, man, first-time caller, man, and into your show and becoming a fan of yours, man. I like your takes.
Thank you.
Making me a believer in you. So I have 2 questions. One is, kind of like the butterfly effect or whatever, like one thing that could happen that messed everything. If Ryan Tannehill didn't stink beginning of last year, because that happened, could all of this debacle have been avoided, and could we still have Malik Willis even on the roster and just not all this stress? Was he the main issue in that?
No.
And,
so let me tell you about Ryan Tannehill, Howie, and I see that you also want to talk about Shedeur Sanders, so I'll let you drop that nugget in there right after I answer this. Let me say this. Ryan Tannehill was set up to fail last year. Now, if you want to say that, hey, this all started when he threw the 3 interceptions against the Bengals and then they traded A.J. Brown, that's one thing. But Ryan Tannehill, nobody would have succeeded behind that. Aaron Brewer playing center and Andre Dillard playing left tackle. Tannehill had no shot last year. What's your take on the Shedeur Sanders thing you want to get in?
Yeah, I agree with that too. Yeah, so Shedeur Sanders, fractional person. You have a way, man, of calling things early, and I've noticed that. You called Levis being a bust early. What is your take on Shedeur Sanders? I want to hear your take on him. What do you think? Can he come to Titans? Is he going to be a good pick? Is it possible?
Well,
Thanks.
again, Howie, thank you for the call. This is the question of the day today. How much of it is you and how much of it is the quarterback themselves? Shedeur Sanders, by all accounts, seems to be the top quarterback prospect in this draft. Where does he compare to other quarterbacks? I don't know, and I haven't evaluated him, so I can't tell you that. But there are a couple of guys. Joe and I got in a big argument about this weeks ago. I think there are 2 guys. I started watching football in 1999 when the Titans became the Titans. I went to 1 game at Vanderbilt when they were the Oilers. They lost to Ryan Leaf and the Chargers. I didn't give a rat's ass the rest of the year. But then when they became the Titans, I was hooked. And it's from 1999 until now, there are 2 quarterbacks who went to terrible organizations, played right away, and became studs. Peyton Manning and Joe Burrow. The only 2. Indy is a terrible organization. They have ruined Andrew Luck. They have ruined Anthony Richardson. And they screwed up the John Elway thing because Irsay's dad might be just as stupid as him. Horrible organization. They draft Peyton Manning. 2 years later, they're 13-3, and they're in the playoffs. And, they had an era with Manning at quarterback. It's a shame they only won, for their sake, it's a shame they only won 1 Super Bowl, but, they were great with Manning. Then they lost Manning. They went right back to being the Colts. Burrow's the same way. The Bengals, again, I started watching football in 99, so, the Weish years and Paul Brown and all that's a little bit before my time. Boomer Esiason and who was the other quarterback they had? Took them to the Super Bowl when they played the 49ers. I can't remember. But the Bengals, terrible organization. Cheap, Marvin Lewis, always okay, but never really all that good. Joe Burrow shows up, Super Bowl. They're the only 2. If Mahomes doesn't go to Kansas City, I don't think Mahomes is that good. I'm serious about that. So you want to ask me about Shedeur Sanders. Jared, what do you think about Shedeur here? I'm like, again, we're trying to figure out the reason why Will Levis stinks is because your operation is terrible, or if it's because Levis is just a bum. And watch Malik. Malik looks like a different man on the Green Bay Packers. Watch Malik play quarterback. That's what's making this even harder. Is you watch Malik and it's like, who is that guy? Because on the Titans, he looked like Montel Jordan. On the Packers, he looks like Michael Jordan. It's like, what's going on here? Jim is up next here on the program. Jim, thank you for calling. Go ahead.
Just a thought. You hinted at it with your last caller. A third option. I was a quarterback in high school and a little bit in college a long, long time ago. And I was mediocre at best, and I got a lot of awards, and I attribute it to my line. A good line can make a decent quarterback look great. I don't know if
okay, I'm gonna let you go. Some of these teams, the Colts have a good offensive line. Like, again, not every team's line sucks. And I mean, look, I think offensive line play across the league is bad, but I do think that offensive line play does matter for young quarterbacks. I do. I think it's an important thing. That's why, again, I think the Bears are the gold standard for stupid in this league. They're going to fire Matt Eberflus at the end of the year, and they're going to hire a new coach. And so then Caleb Williams will have to learn a new offense, and he'll have a new terminology, and he'll have new – and it's like, you guys are so stupid. Why couldn't you just be a little bit proactive? And I feel similarly about the Bears when they decided to draft Roma Dunze with that second first-round pick, where it was like, well, we got to get him a weapon. I'm like, he's got DJ Moore. What are you talking about? He's got Colt Kmet. You have weapons for him. Get him a line. And it's like, no. We don't want to do that. So, yeah, I think young quarterbacks need lines. It's not like the Packers have the best offensive line in the NFL. According to Pro Football Focus a couple weeks ago, Indy had the best offensive line in the NFL. And they're still struggling with their young quarterback. And it's not exactly like Joe Flacco's the greatest thing. They lost to Jacksonville with Joe Flacco. So, again, make of it what you will, but I don't think it's as simple as, well, they don't have an offensive line, so I just don't think I don't. Greg texts into the text line and says, you didn't know what Malik Willis could be because you and the local media wrote him off after the first preseason, brainwashing the fans in the process. Malik definitely had fans here and people wanting to give him more of an opportunity. Let me tell you this. When I watch a guy throw the ball away on 4th down of a 2-minute drill, I know he's not ready for the NFL. I said before the start of that season, they need a backup quarterback. Well, but Malik can't. No. Malik needed a redshirt year. They didn't give it to him. And you know whose fault that is? John Robinson's. And I know you guys think all I ever do is talk about the fact that John Robinson won 61% of his games. You think I don't like Rand Carthon, and again, Chad Brinker's with that. You think I don't like them because I like John Robinson. And I'd never criticize John Robinson. That's what you guys say. Not the fact that I don't like them, because they stink and this team is awful and they've gotten worse every single week since they took over. But I couldn't believe the fact that the Titans would go into the season with Malik Willis as the backup quarterback when he clearly wasn't ready. Like it's the NFL. And you could tell Malik was not ready. But last year was year 2. And they played the Ravens, and Malik went in, and in a 2-minute drill, Malik Willis dove inbounds. Could have just run out, and he dove back into the field of play. Somebody explain that one to me. And everybody keeps saying offensive line, offensive line, offensive line. It's the Packers have Jordan Morgan. They took him in the first round too. The Packers have tackles that they've taken in the 4th round and the 7th round, and Bakhtiari's not still on that line. Everybody keeps telling me it's about the offensive line. I'm not convinced that the Packers have that great of an offensive line. Now, is it as bad as yours with PT out there? Probably not. One texter says, I would say 60% Will Levis, 40% coaching. The main reason Levis has regressed so much this year is because the pressure that comes with being the guy for an NFL team. He's so uptight, staring at reads, thinking entirely too much about making a perfect play every time and not making boneheaded plays as the result. Some guys can handle the pressure or be taught to manage it, but unfortunately, he doesn't seem to be wired for composure, and the coaching staff doesn't know how to simplify things enough for him to be able to process it at game level. And it's bad enough to be in that spot with a young quarterback. I don't know, man. 40% the coaching staff? When all these other quarterbacks were better? Like Levis was better last year. Rudolph was, again, I didn't watch the Steelers, and these Steeler fans are like, Mason Rudolph's a great quarterback. But Rudolph, I have to assume, was better last year. And Malik's better in Green Bay. I think you gotta give coaching more than 40%. And again, coaching, organization, management, it's all kind of the same thing there. Ethan's up next. Ethan, thank you for calling. Go.
Hey man, I just want to say, like Malik's had success against, two teams that aren't great, man. I mean,
Will Levis threw for 95 yards against that same Colts team.
Hey, I get it, and that's another point I want to make. I think Callahan, I don't think he wants Will Levis. I think he wants his own pick of the litter, and I think he's actually challenging Will to try to do things that he knows he's not good at. I don't think he wants him. I think he wants somebody else. And honestly, I think Will could have played through this injury, but I don't think Brian wants him, man.
I would tell you something right now. If that's what Brian Callahan thinks, Brian Callahan's stupid. And I'll tell you why. Thank you, Ethan. There's no telling what Amy Adams-Strunk's going to do, but I don't even think that they know what Amy Adams-Strunk is going to do. So if you're Brian Callahan and you think that all of a sudden, I'll throw Levis under the bus because I desperately wanted a coaching job and then I want to go pick my own guy, like you're doing this with the wrong organization. And I like Brian Callahan, and I think that sometimes he stretches the truth because all coaches have to do that. But I don't think he's stretching the truth about this. I think Brian Callahan was brought in to coach Will Levis, thought he could, and now he's figuring it out. Chris Sanders joins us next on the program. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game. This week's Nationals Best Deal of the Week is Teddy's Tavern. Teddy's Tavern is your go-to spot for great food, cold drinks, and live music right in the heart of downtown. Get half off a $100 gift card now for Teddy's Tavern at theGameNational.com/deals while supplies last. So I was reading Pro Football Focus had their rankings out for offensive line play. The Titans are 31st. And there was a little nugget in here about Lloyd Cushenberry. Quote, although Lloyd Cushenberry allowed pressure on just 2.2% of pass plays last season with the Broncos, the Tennessee center has surrendered pressure at a 5.1% clip this season, his worst rate since his rookie year. So add him to the list. Guys that are with the Titans play terribly. They go somewhere else. They play better. They come from somewhere else where they're good. They come here. They play bad. What is it? Somebody help me out. Meanwhile, Malik Willis is just throwing bombs for the Green Bay Packers. Chris Sanders joins us now in the program, presented by Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. Chris, let's start there. Why do these guys leave the Titans and play better? Elijah Molden has 2 interceptions. Malik Willis is playing very well for the Green Bay Packers. And then why are the Titans so bad? I mean, what's going on here?
I don't know. I mean, we always talk about it, especially when the draft stuff come on. We want to make sure they have a good offensive line, but it's kind of like I say this all the time. If you put on the same record, you're gonna hear the same song, and every song we keep hearing is about the right tackle, the left tackle, all those things that we talk about. I just think that what they need to start doing is make sure that the players they bring in are really, really impact players. I mean, I know Rand Carthon, in free agency had a splash. I mean, I know he went and got Steve Nwuzie, but your star players are hurt. You got to get some guys in here that's available, that can make plays, but also that are healthy. Cushenberry, I understand what you're saying. I mean, he's a center and this and that, and he's not playing up his capabilities. But you just got to figure out guys that's going to come in here and not just be a body, but to be a body that can be an impact.
So I think there's going to be some arguing on the pregame show on Sunday between Derek and I. You brought up Rand Carthon bringing in L'Jarius Sneed. He's going to miss his 3rd straight game, it seems. With a quad injury. Chidobe Awuzie, I don't even know if he's played in a game with the Tennessee Titans this year. And so I am very out on the management of the Tennessee Titans. I think they're incompetent. Derek thinks that they just freaking hang the moon. Where do you sit on Chad Brinker and Rand Carthon?
I think Rand, you got to give him another year.
Why?
I mean, I know you don't.
Why?
I think
what good has he done?
1 year, Jared. 1 year.
Two.
1 year.
This is 2.
You can't count.
Yes, I can. I can do whatever I want. And he was the general manager of this team last year.
Let me ask you a question.
That counts.
Let me break this down to you very, very clearly, okay? When you first got in the radio, you were okay. But now you're very, very good.
I think I was pretty much
What what if they'd have let you go your first year? What would you do? You wouldn't be as good as you are. Rand Carthon.
I was good my first year, Chris.
Okay. Let me break this down. I'm not saying you wasn't good, but you're very good now. That's what I'm saying. Let me break this down.
Well, he sucks now.
Hold on. At the beginning of the year, everybody was saying let Rand cook.
Not everybody
was saying it. Right. Hold on. I'm not saying everybody, but everybody was saying that, right? They said go they have a big splash in free agency. What'd you do? You go get 2 shutdown corners, a Reed and a Awuzie, but they hurt. So it's not that he's not doing anything. It's just that
he's doing the wrong things.
Oh my gosh, Jared, come on.
Is he doing the right things?
Come on, man. Jared, come on, man.
Is he doing the right things?
Jared, he's building a foundation.
What is the foundation of the Titans?
Let me ask you a question. What if they'd have been 6-1? What would you say right now?
I would say that they did a good job.
See, there's a catch-22. See, the thing about it, in my opinion, I understand. See, you're looking at the record, and I understand it. Absolutely, they're 1-6. Absolutely, they're playing terrible. But now you got to start building.
What is good out? Let's take the record out of this.
Okay.
What is good about this team right now? What is good about the state of this organization?
Okay, let me ask you a question. Okay, here we go. Jeff Fisher comes in with the Houston Oilers, right? Right or wrong?
Chris, I asked you a simple question. I said, what is good?
Hold on. Because okay, Jared, you telling me something that you don't know about. I've been in the organization where our organization sucked. I've been in the organization where we're getting our heads beat in. Everybody wants to just clean house. Okay, if you clean house and take everybody out, now you got to start completely all over again. Now you got to start the culture. Now you got to do all these things all over. It ain't as easy as just firing people. Listen, everybody wants to be the top dog. Oh man, just fire people and get them out of here. You're gonna bring somebody in. You're gonna start from the beginning. You're gonna get a new.
But again, right now you're at the very, very, very bottom.
Man.
Right?
Come on,
You're the second worst team in the league. You're tied with Carolina for the worst record, right?
Jerry, you tripping, man.
But are you not tied with Carolina for the worst record in the NFL?
I understand that.
Okay. You're talking about things like, if you do this, you're going to have to start all the way over. Start all the way over how? You don't have anything good now. You brought up culture. The culture of this team isn't good. Calvin Ridley called out the coach 2 weeks ago, and they decided we're going to throw him the ball more.
What did he say? How did he call out the coach? What did he say?
He said he wasn't getting targets early in the game.
Is that calling out the coaches?
I mean, who calls the plays?
Jared, listen to me very carefully.
Do you think this team has a good culture?
Hold on. I really do. I think it could be better. Because you're talking about look at the Raiders, man. Look at the Dallas Cowboys. Those are organizations that suck right now.
They're better than you.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter right now. It really doesn't. What are you going to do? We say this all the time. You got two choices: get better, get better. And let me get back to my point. Let me ask you, when they brought Jeff Fisher in, this organization was in total disarray. We were getting our heads beat in. Now, all of a sudden, what if they'd have pulled the trigger and let Jeff Fisher go? Do you think we would have been in the Super Bowl in 1999?
Well, I think Floyd Reese would have hired a better coach than Jeff Fisher second go around, so maybe. But I hear what you're saying, right? But again, when Fisher took over, this team was the worst in the league.
It was.
Right. So this team was not the worst team in the league last year.
They were bad.
They were a scotch. They were a ref's call away from the playoffs the day that Rand Carthon took this job. And you can make excuses for him, and that's fine. You can make excuses about Vrabel this and this one that. But they were this close to the playoffs.
They won 6 games last year.
They were 7-10 when Rand Carthon took the job.
7-10.
Right.
Hold on.
But they were this close to the playoffs, were they not?
So you get this close to the playoffs.
If they beat Jacksonville,
they still went in the playoffs.
If they had beaten Jacksonville the last game of that year, and again, it came down to Josh Dobbs, was his arm going forward or not, on the fumble, that team's in the playoffs. Period. Right?
Jared, what the hell are you talking about?
I'm talking about the fact that when Rand Carthon took the job.
It has nothing to do with cleaning house.
It has everything to do with what you brought up about Jeff Fisher.
Why would you want to clean house when it's
because everything with this organization is crap.
Oh,
that's why.
Break it down. Good crap.
Chris, they can't get lined up on a kickoff. They can't stop a punt return. They can't punt the ball. They can't get it off. They can't
bring different coaches in.
The quarterback stinks. The backup quarterback stinks. The line stinks. The free agents they went out and got stink. What doesn't stink about this team? Everything stinks.
Let me ask you a question.
And you want to keep doing it because we haven't given the guys that took a team that, again, was this close to the playoffs, and they have everything stinking right now, and you want to let them keep stinking.
It has nothing to do with stinking, dude. It's about building. That's what you don't know about. All you looking at is right now. That's all what people do. You look at right now, oh, he stinks and get him out. It's been 1 year.
What are they building?
1 stinking year. Let me ask you a question.
It's been 2.
Let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question. Let's talk about this special team stuff. Okay, you got a coach that you want to get rid of him also. Get him out of here. He sucks. He puts the right scheme in. And guys are not hustling. What do? Do you blame that on the coach? You blame that on the players. Why don't you bring somebody here that has leaders to make sure guys are hustling? Why don't you replace the players? Everybody wants to get rid of the coaches. And the reason why I'm looking at it in a different perspective right now, because now I'm a coach. Because if I make one mistake, everybody wants to get me out of here.
I did change the players. Derrick Henry's not here. Ryan Tannehill's not here. Kevin Byard's not here. I changed the team.
Special teams. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about special.
Chris, you know as well as I do, the old saying is you're either coaching it or you're allowing it to happen. How come 31 other teams can punt the ball and the Titans can't punt the ball? Is it because the Titans don't have good enough players to punt the ball, but the 31 other teams have good enough players to punt the ball?
So get rid of the whole staff.
Yes.
Get
That's
rid of the
what
whole staff
cleaning house is.
and start completely over. Now, what if you okay? Let me ask you a question. What if you clean house? Okay, you let go of Rand Carthon. You let everybody go. You bring in another regime. You bring in a great coach with a great name, and they go 1-6. Do you get rid of them?
I'll worry about it when they go 1-6.
No, I'm asking you a question. So if that next regime that you want come in, they go 1-6. Do you let them go?
Again, you're asking me about a hypothetical that I don't know what it is or it isn't.
You're not asking my question. If I'm saying, if that team, that regime you want to bring in, if that coach you want to bring in, if that GM
what if they go
6-1? No, I'm asking. You didn't answer my question. I said, what if they go 1-6? Do you get rid of them? Tell me why you wouldn't get rid of them.
I'll get rid of them too.
Come on, man.
At least I answered your question. I keep asking you what's good about this team, and you don't answer the question. What's good about the team? No, I answered your question.
No.
I answered your question. What is good about this team?
I never said that there was something good about this team. I said don't get rid of the whole regime. Did you hear what I said? I didn't say that the team was good. But I'm telling you, you got to think logical. You get rid of everybody, get rid of the general manager, get rid of the head coach, get rid of all of them, get rid of all of them, and you're back at square zero. Then what are we going to use that term? Oh, we're rebuilding. So now if they're rebuilding.
At least they'll say it.
But if you say
Rand says the ball didn't bounce their way.
You said we're rebuilding, right? But then they go 1-6. Do you get rid of them and start all over again?
I already answered that question, and I said yes.
Here's the deal. Nobody wants to be patient. Nobody wants to trust the process. Everybody just wants
because the process has been awful.
Right now,
the process is a guard with the 11th overall pick.
You telling me they couldn't change next year? So you thinking you can foresee the future next year that it's going to be just as bad?
Yes. Was I not right about them? This offseason, did I not say last year, Chris, that I would clean house, that I would fire Vrabel and I'd fire Rand and I'd start over? And guess what? I was right.
1 year.
2.
1 year.
2.
That you can't count that year.
Did he get paid?
That year. You can't count that year.
Did he get paid?
Yeah, you cannot count that year.
Why not?
Basically, because he wasn't in charge. It was Vrabel that was in charge.
So we gave him a promotion. They drafted a terrible guard. First of all, Vrabel wasn't in charge. It is reported that Vrabel asked to be in charge, and they said no. And the fact that now people are saying that, Vrabel, it was all Vrabel's fault, is revisionist history and convenient at best. Right?
No.
Oh, God. Oh, God.
No.
Sunday is going to be the 2 longest hours of my life.
And I'm going to be after your tail, too.
The guys who like to lose, Chris Sanders and Derek Mason.
Hey, man. What did you say?
I said the 2 guys that like to lose. If you want to sign up for more Rand Carthon, you're signing up for more losing. If you want to sign up for...
Hold on. Let me squash this really, really quick. The reason why I'm saying what I'm saying, not that I like to lose. I'm the most competitive dude that you will ever meet. So I want to make this very clear. I'm saying that sometimes we're rushing to get people out of here as opposed to letting it try to build something great. So let me clear that really, really clear. I don't like losing, and I don't be labeled losing. And don't ever say that again. Because the one thing that I do, I'm looking at it in perspective because I've been around football, I've talked about football, and I've been when it was bad, but there's a situation to where I had to make it good. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I don't think these guys can do that, Chris.
Okay. All right.
But I'll see you Sunday, and I still love you.
Brother. Love you too, brother.
Yep, Chris Sanders joining us on the program, presented by Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. We went over there a little bit. But let me say this, and let me say this about Derek and Chris. Those guys are winners because they played on teams that won. But let me say, what we got right now, if you want to sign up for more of this, you're signing up for more losing. I mean, it is what it is. All right, a lot of people want to respond to this. 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company on 1025 The Game. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. I got to call Chris Sanders later today because I love Chris Sanders with all my heart. I think that's the most pissed off I've ever made Chris Sanders over the years. You know I love him. We love Chris. Crazy Uncle Chris. But I think that's the most mad that I've ever made him. And I love that man with all my heart. And I do. But boy, I there's a one thing specifically I got to pick a bone with. Because Robbie Stanley texted me, and I stand by that. And I think this is a point that I heard Chris make. I've heard Derek make it. I've heard Kevin Dyson make it. I mean, this must be like a Titans wide receivers of the 2000s all got together and said, hey, this is going to be our talking point. Because Robbie texted me, and I challenged Chris on this, which is, what is this weird thing now where everybody is just acting like Rand wasn't the GM last year? And I've heard Derek bring this up multiple times. Derek's like, well, last year you guys said Rand wasn't in charge. Well, first of all, what we said last year was we didn't know who was in charge because the Titans never made that clear. The Titans never said who was in charge. And I think the reason they did that was because they didn't necessarily say, okay, this guy does this and this guy does that. But after the season was over, the Titans let you know who was in charge. When they picked Rand Carthon over Mike Vrabel. This is from Diana Rossini's story. And by the way, there's another thing I reported last year where I said somebody in the building told me that Rand plays GM more than actually is GM. And that doesn't mean that Rand wasn't the GM. That means that Rand didn't really do anything last year. That, again, they were waiting for him to do something. Like, hey, man, you're the GM. It's your job to do X, Y, Z. And Rand just said, nah. And again, I'm just telling you what I heard. People got mad at me when I said it. But this is from a Diana Rossini article last year after Vrabel got fired. Titans ownership embraced Carthon's vision. Informed by his time with the San Francisco 49ers, one of the best-run organizations in the NFL. An organizational framework with assistant GMs Chad Brinker and Anthony Robinson in support. The question was whether Vrabel would be okay with this change of approach. The Titans considered moving on from Vrabel after last season for a fresh start, according to a team source, but Strunk still believed Vrabel was a good coach and worth keeping. Does that sound like they made Mike Vrabel the GM? Yeah, we were thinking about firing him anyways, but we think he's a good coach, so we're going to keep him. We want to do what this guy's telling us to do, but we're going to make Vrabel the GM. Also in the Diana Rossini report, or Diana Rossini and Joe Rexrode report, in this, quote, during the hiring process to replace GM John Robinson, who was fired by Strunk late last season, Vrabel made two comments to Strunk that created friction between them. 3 team or league sources said. Vrabel wanted full control over the roster, saying that he'd earned it, and Strunk pointedly disagreed. So the next time somebody tells you, and Chris, I love you with all my heart. Derek, I love you with all my heart. But the next time someone tells you Vrabel made those picks last year, and it's Vrabel's fault, and Vrabel's the worst, and Vrabel, again, it is reported Mike Vrabel asked for that power, and Amy Adams Strunk said no. Rand Carthon was the general manager last year. And again, Diana Rossini says Chad Brinker's the one who's in charge of the Titans right now. But Rand Carthon said in an article on the Titans website, Rand said, hey, I've got it contractually that I'm in control of the roster. So don't be making up stuff or don't be like, I'm sorry. Vrabel wasn't the GM last year. Carthon was. And again, according to Rand, he's got control over the roster. Again, I lump Rand and Chad together because if I'm firing Rand, I'm firing Chad too. But they were in this together. And this idea of like, well, you know, they're losing all these games, but it's okay because they're building something. That's not what Rand was saying in February. This was Rand on the Midday Show on Chase and Big Joe in February when he was asked about the criticism that he was receiving after the first year, after the first ball didn't bounce our way comments. This is what Rand Carthon said before this season.
how did you adapt to that and adjust to getting that criticism to make yourself stronger and make you better at your job? And how will you apply that into year two?
Man, I just ignore the noise. I mean, there's a reason why I'm not on social media, so you don't have to, hear all that. Like, I'm not on social media, but, I have friends and family that are, and they kind of, keep me in the loop. Again, you don't, go out to be in one of these positions and not know that scrutiny is going to come. But to me, the cure all to it all is winning football games. And that's what my focus is and always will be, is winning football games. And I know that the more we could do that, the better off we'll be. And that's my job. And I know ultimately if I don't do enough of that, then I know this won't be my job. And so I try to stay focused on, the guys in the building hear me talk about it all the time, keep the main thing the main thing. And the main thing is constantly improving this roster and putting us in position to win football games. And so that's always been my focus.
Sounds good, right? Well, the main thing is they're 1-6. The main thing is this team's not better than they were last year. The main thing is you can tell me you improved the roster. Trevor says, oh, no, the roster's much better. I'm like, how? The line still sucks. The corners still stink. The special teams are shockingly worse than they were under Craig Aukerman. How's it better? And Rand told you right there, if we don't win football games, I'm going to get fired. Well, they're not winning football games. So now that they're losing, it's like, well, that's not fair. And I just think that's ridiculous. But I still love Chris. I do love Chris with all my heart. And Derek. But boy, that pregame show on Sunday, we're going to be heated. Just because I disagree. And I think the other thing, too, is we all want what's best for the Titans. I just push back on what I think are some false narratives. Like, oh, they're building a foundation. What is the foundation of this team? The line stinks. They don't have a quarterback. I mean, how many good young players are on this team? To me, this is where you were when you had Ken Wisenhunt and Rustin Webster. And I wouldn't have given Ken Wisenhunt and Rustin Webster, and Rustin Webster was a good man, but I wouldn't give Ken Wisenhunt and Rustin Webster one more second of running the Titans. This is, I guess, a difference of opinion. All right, phones. People want to weigh in. We'll do it next. Stillman & Company, 102.5 The Game. that when reflecting on the first 7 games, that the ball just hasn't bounced the team's way this year. Do you believe that?
There's moments where it feels like that, but there's also a part of football where you have to make your own luck to some degree too. You got to those things that feel like luck and feel like the bounces go your way or don't go your way. Part of that is making it happen for yourself too. We've also given away a lot, and that's there's moments where it feels like there's like 3 plays a game where it's like, what in the world is happening right now? Like, how does this even happen? But there's a part of the ball bouncing your way. Like, good teams have to kind of just goes your way sometimes. The ball, they end up with the ball, they make plays in the ball. There's a momentum factor that it's hard to like pinpoint what that is. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely times where it's felt that way. But again, I'm more in the line of you sort of have to create those opportunities and you have to make your luck a bit too in this league. And we've not done a good enough job of it.
That was Brian Callahan, who is not willing to go along with, the ball hasn't bounced our way. Let's go to your phones. As promised, phone line driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. Brad is up next here on our program. Brad, go ahead.
Hey, Jared, I drive a shuttle van, and I'm in the car from 6 o'clock until about 4. And I generally am always listening to 102.5, but my anxiety can't handle the screaming all the time. But I was listening today, and dude, there was a couple of times you disrespected that guy that was talking about skills. I thought that was a great question, and you didn't even accept it. But when I heard you yelling at Chris Sanders, who had a good point, you just won't listen to anybody else. You won't even consider anybody else's thoughts. So you're going to lose. No one's going to want to be on your show, and no one's going to want to listen to your show if you don't.
Brad, I think we're doing okay, but I do appreciate your call. Let me say this. Number one, I love Chris Sanders with all my heart. This isn't anybody's business, but when Floyd died, it was a really sad time for people like me and Chris and everybody around here. And like 100 people called. And you know whose call I answered? Chris. So this idea that like Chris and I got into it and all of a sudden like Chris didn't want to be on the show, I highly doubt that. Let me say this. I wish I lived my life the way Chris Sanders lives his. I wish I had the positive outlook on life that Chris Sanders has. I said when the Titans drafted Tavondre Sweat, I said what they need to do is they need to hire Chris Sanders to kind of be his mentor. And for him to really be there, to uplift him and to be positive and tell him what it takes and sit and all that kind of stuff. Because I really believe that. Because I think that he's a great ambassador for the football team. So, again, this whole idea that like, oh man, Jared, you wouldn't. Here's what I'll say. I keep asking a simple question of everybody who defends what is going on right now with the Titans. What's good? And nobody wants to answer the question. They want to blame Mike Vrabel. They want to sit there and say that, oh no, you've got to give them time to rebuild this. Why? I didn't hire them in the first place. Why do I have to give them time? If I can see right away that they don't know what they're doing, if I can see that right away, why would I continue to give them more time? Why do I owe them time? What about this team is in a state that would make you say, you know what, over 2 years, you guys have done a good job? What about this team would make you say, over 1 year, you guys have done a good job? In fact, I remember at the Super Bowl, Thomas Dimitroff, the old Falcons general manager, came on our show. And Thomas was like, hey, man, you got to give Rand another chance. Just trust me, man. You got to give Rand another chance. He knows football. His dad was a great coach. He worked for me with the Falcons. You got to give him another chance. I listened to the Chad Brinker podcast. I did not listen to that Chad Brinker podcast thinking, hey, this is going to be the biggest load of bull crap I've ever heard in my life. It just happened to be that. So I criticized, but I said, okay, we'll see. We'll see who's right. Let Rand cook, Jared. Okay, we'll see who's right. They're worse. They're 1-6. They're the worst team in the NFL. And it's like, well, it's Vrabel's fault. You mean Vrabel, who had a winning record? And look, we've been talking about, why does Malik Willis look better somewhere else? Why does Elijah Molden look better somewhere else? Why does Lloyd Cushenberry look worse here? Don't think that Mike Vrabel's not a part of that. We talk about how John Robinson was so bad in the draft. And yet, I do wonder how much of those players that they drafted, because it's not like, again, there were some that I'm like, who the hell is Monty Rice when they drafted him? But it's not like all of those players when they were drafted, everyone was like, oh my God, you used the 18th pick on Treylon Burks. And yet, it seems like a lot of the Vrabel players didn't develop. So I'm not saying Vrabel is, by any stretch of the imagination, a sacred cow. I would have fired Vrabel too. But I keep asking, what has gotten better? This team was an eyelash away from the playoffs. An eyelash. Like, you can say, well, that team wasn't any good. That's fine. But it doesn't change reality of where this team sat. And since then, they have gotten worse. They were worse last year than they were 2 years ago, and they're worse this year than they were last year. Where have they gotten better? Have they gotten better on the offensive line? Doesn't look like it. Have they gotten better at quarterback? I mean, they have 1 turnover on defense. They can't punt the ball. They don't know the rules. They can't line up correctly on a kickoff. What's better about the Titans? Somebody tell me what's better about the Titans, and then you'll have an argument basis for why what we're watching here is acceptable. Brian Callahan knows it. Brian Callahan said the other day in front of everybody at 1-6, he said, he was asked about Amy's patience, and he said, hey, you're patient. You can only be patient for so long. He knows it. This is the league. What culture are they building? I don't even know who the leaders on this team are. Culture? DeAndre Hopkins with his helmet half off on the sideline at the end of the game, and everybody on TV is saying, yeah, I don't know what's going on over there. What's good about this team? So, again, you can be mad at me for being argumentative. I need you to tell me something other than, Jared, you're kind of an a-hole. Because, I'd like to think that I can be a nice guy. But at the same time, I don't want to watch this anymore. Do you understand? Think about this pregame show that we do and it wins awards. Think about this pregame show that we do every Sunday. Every Sunday for 7 years. Whether it was me, Floyd, and Derek, me, Floyd, and Chris, me, Chris, Mark Howard, me, Chris, and Derek. In whatever way we've done it, however we had for about 7 years, every Sunday where we actually broke down the game. We talked about, okay, so what do they need to do to stop Stephon Diggs here? You can't do that because nobody in town wants to talk about the game because we know what's going to happen almost every Sunday. And this Sunday, you're playing the Patriots, who might just be as bad as you. I don't want to do this anymore. I want to be good again. And I know what good is. For whatever that's worth. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. So somebody just tweeted in and said, I can't listen to you anymore. You're a nut job. And that would make me feel bad, but I looked at the tweet or the text before. It says the Titans should hire Eddie George as their head coach. I'm not sure I'm all worried about this guy's opinion. Speaking of Ram, there's another thing that really bothered me about the sit down he did with the Tennessean. And we haven't gotten to that because we've been so focused on the ball not bouncing their way and The little things in the fans, stick with us. Based off of what? But we'll get to it next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game. By the way, speaking of the award-winning pregame show, be sure to join us on Sunday for the award-winning pregame show live from John Bon Jovi's for the pregame show from 9:30 to 11:30, where we break down the Titans. Well, I say we break down the Titans and the Patriots, but we'll be talking about the state of the Titans. The award-winning pregame show is presented by Parman Tractor and Equipment, Sun Deck Nashville, Sloan's Motorcycle ATV, and award-winning Blue Note Juke Joint and Blue Note Crossroads Bourbon.
I think the Titans could differentiate themselves somewhat by being more transparent. I think Brian Callahan has been far more transparent.
I would
And that's a refreshing thing about this team. And Rand would be wise to follow his lead, but he tends to misstep when he speaks publicly. I also don't think the personnel question was about the quality of street free agents. That's not what he's asking. We all know that you're not going to go solve this team's problems. I think the question is more about like what you failed to do or what you assembled and what it's doing.
That was PK this morning, and I think he's kind of onto something. And again, not to beat a dead horse here, but like the general manager is in his second year, and the team is the worst in the league. It's obviously on the table. People are obviously mad. People want to know. Hold on, wait a minute. You spent $230 million in free agency. You talked about how good this team was going to be, and this team is, and I'm not going to say they're incompetent, though I have said that, and I do believe that, but this team itself is they're incompetent. Quarterbacks can't throw the ball to the right guys. They're throwing the ball to the other team too much. The Titans can't stop a punt return. Jahmyr Gibbs takes the ball to the left. Jahmyr Gibbs didn't make a cut. He ran 70 yards up the sideline for a touchdown. People want to hear from the general manager to say, what is going on here? And Nick Suss caught up with Rand and they're trading guys away, caught up with him in the locker room after the game on Sunday. And Paul was talking about, again, the idea that the question that Rand was asked about personnel. When Rand said that, God only made so many football players. And it's like, yeah, but you needed to get more talented football players or better talented football players. You needed to get those guys in the offseason. You can't necessarily do that now. Here's a problem I had with the entire piece. The first question, for instance, what was the thought process that led to moving Hopkins and Jones? Rand said, for us, those are tough decisions that you have to make, but if we're going to build this thing for long-term sustainability, you need draft picks in order to do so. So it was an opportunity for us to get draft picks. Coming into the season, we only had 5. It's hard to do that. So since then, we've made 3 trades, and we've been able to get 3 picks to get us to 8 picks in the next draft. So there wasn't hey, we thought we had a better team. Clearly, things weren't going the way we wanted to. And we decided, hey, you know what? We've got to focus on the future. We cannot worry this point. The mistakes were made. We've got to be better, but none of that. None of, hey, we messed this up. None of, hey, we could have been better. Hey, we should be accountable for XYZ. Question 2. Does it feel like punting on the season when you made that move? How do you rationalize these trades with the goals of winning now? I think it's a very fair question for a GM. Quote, we're absolutely not punting on the season. We're still trying to win games. Obviously, that didn't happen today for a myriad of reasons, but never punting on the season. That's not in our DNA. That's not what we're made of. Again, never, the season didn't go the way we wanted to. We made some mistakes. We're going to have to this, that. Where's the hand going in the air saying, hey, I got to do a better job? How tough is it watching a game like this when a team you assembled is struggling this much? Quote, it's tough. It's always tough when you're not getting wins. It's tough. And trust me, nobody's more upset about it than us about that. Okay. But you get another opportunity next week, and that's what you've got to clear your head and figure out what went wrong, how you're going to clean up those mistakes and move on to the next one. Not like, we put a lot of work into this offseason. We thought we had a team that could compete. And obviously we made some mistakes. We're going to have to go back to the drawing board and we're going to have, nope. Instead it's, well, we got a shot next week to win. Do you have a message for the fans about what's going on? Quote, my message for the fans would be, just stay with us. We understand your frustration. We're frustrated too, but we're working diligently every day to get to the next one. And that's what we're going to do. For us to come in and have to flip the roster the way you have to get it to a competitive point and not be able to see the W's in the win column, we understand. We understand this fan base's frustration, but I promise you we're working as hard as we can to fix it and get it right. Again, at least he's saying we're trying to get it right, but there's no remorse here. What can be done in season to fix the problems? Answer. From that standpoint, God only made so many talented football players. There's only so many good football players that are available to you on the street. So if you're not in the market for trading up for them, then you have to keep churning the roster, keep working guys out. And we've worked out a ton of guys through the whole process, whether we've signed them or not, just to be able to know what's on the street. We'll keep looking, keep running that part of our process, and hopefully unearth some guys that can help us. Great. Looking what's happened in the first 7 games, building for the last 10, what do you expect for the season? And that's when he told us that the ball didn't bounce their way. He said, our first year in San Francisco, we started 0-9, and we were able to have a little run at the end of the season. You look at these guys here in Detroit. They weren't built overnight. I think their first year, they started 1-6, and then they had a nice little run to end the season. So trust me, we're working, and we're going to figure it out. How many questions and answers was that, Ian? 6? 5?
5 or 6.
At any point did Rand say, hey, we made a mistake? At any point did he say to the fans, we're sorry? He said, nobody's more frustrated about that than we are. We're working hard every day to get it better. But again, even when it came to the fans' frustration, he talked about, well, when you've got to flip the roster the way we've had to flip the roster. And I truthfully believe that these guys are incapable, not Brian Callahan, but Brinker and Carthon. They are incapable of accepting responsibility. We keep talking about this whole, Rand doesn't have press conferences, and is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Well, he talked to the paper, and it looks like it's a bad thing. And and I was thinking about this last week. If I was general manager, I'd want to have a press conference. And I'll tell you why. Because regardless of how the press treats me or doesn't treat me, that doesn't matter. What matters is the fact that right now in town, 90% of the people don't think that I have a clue as to what I'm doing. In this town, 49% of the people think that the football team will be better off with me, a local radio host with 0 NFL experience, being general manager than him. That's a concern. So I'd want to have a press conference, and I'd want to get up there and say, hey, here's what's going wrong. This is what we thought. And hey, this is our plan. And you don't have to say exactly like, oh, we're going to sign Johnny, or, oh, we're looking to sign Jimmy, or, oh, but give me the explanation for why this isn't just a complete and total tire fire. And once we have that, then it's like, okay, this is their vision for what it is going forward. But instead, they don't talk because they can't accept responsibility. They can't be accountable. They can't do it. And if you can't be accountable, if you can't be responsible, if you can't do those things, then you're not good enough to be GM. You're not good enough to be head coach. You're not good enough to be the president. You're not good enough to do those things. Like, if I can't trust you to be able to hold a press conference, how can I trust you to build an NFL team? Brian Callahan, poor guy. Brian Callahan has some of these press conferences where he explains things, and I'm like, man, Brian Callahan is sharp. Like, there's something there. I don't know why it doesn't exist on the football field. I can't explain it, but there's something there. I just don't. But when you don't talk, I can't do that. And what did Brian Callahan say when they lost to the Packers? The Packers, the first 2 games, it was like, wow, that was, if this didn't happen, they'd have beaten the Bears. And so that was a train wreck. Don't blame the coach. The second game, Levis rolls the ball on the ground. There's a little here, a little there. We'll figure it out, whatever. The third, you're 0-3. You just got kicked. You just got crushed. And it was a quarterback you got rid of 3 weeks before. That's not good. And the first thing Brian Callahan said when he got up there was, we're an 0-3 team, and I'm an 0-3 head coach. Which was his way of putting his hand up and saying, I own the blame for this. I don't think the other guys can do that. I don't think Brinker can do that. I think Brinker's whole thing is, well, I run data analytics and I service the head coach. That's my job. I think that's his approach. And again, with Rand, trust us, fans. Nobody's working harder than us. Trust you with another $230 million to go spend on guys with 30% catch rates? Injured corners that keep getting injured? Okay. By the way, there was one big sticking point over the offseason between me and the Let Rand Cook crowd. And I think we're starting to see the problem with this one, too. We'll do it next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game.
Do you have any idea of Snead as to his availability?
Snead probably still week to week. I don't anticipate him being out there today. So we'll just kind of see it as the week progresses. I think he's hopefully getting closer.
That was Brian Callahan. So L'Jarius Sneed is still week to week. And this is week number 3. Can I ask a question? What happened to this offseason when we kept saying, hey, L'Jarius Sneed, they say bad knees, on L'Jarius Sneed. And people say, oh, no, Jared, you're just a hater. You're just a. And here we are 3 weeks in a row, and L'Jarius Sneed is hurt. And remember what the excuse was? Again, all the teams in the league were like, yeah, no. And all of a sudden it was like, well, but L'Jarius Sneed never misses games. Gets the contract here. He's missed 3. In fact, this was L'Jarius Sneed the day that his signing with the Titans became official. And this was what he said when asked about his knees and his ability to play.
Can you tell Titan fans, in regards to your knee, that they have nothing to worry about?
Titans fans, I'm here to tell you that you don't have anything to worry about from L'Jarius Sneed knee. L'Jarius Sneed is going to go out there every practice, every game, and give you my all. Go back and watch the film. I gave everybody my all, no matter what my knee, because the condition that my knee was in. My knee is in great position. I know what to do to maintain my knee, or whatever I need to do. I got this end of my part. I'm just going out here and play ball. Just give Tennessee Titans fans and this organization all of me. So the knee is not a problem.
Okay.
So they can stop worrying about that.
Now, look, I get the difference between the knee and the quad. I understand that. But let me say this. L'Jarius Sneed's got to play. This was, again, the concern is like, yo, dude, you didn't get signed to be hurt. I hate what happened to our AI cancer curing model with injuryprevention.com. And this is what I worry about. I call it the David Givens thing. I don't know if you guys remember David Givens, but he won the Super Bowls, I think the first 2 or so with the Patriots, and the Titans signed him as a wide receiver, and they brought David Givens in, and I think he played 5 games. And then it was like, oh yeah, no, it is what it is. I can't. These guys got to play. TD does say to me, says can't predict the helmet to the quad. This is supposed to be for every injury, right? I don't know. Let's go to T-Dog, who's up next here on our program. T-Dog, go ahead.
Yo, Jared, I really do like you. I like your show. I like your knee jerky, and I love, your shock jock stuff, man. So I'm just saying this, but do you really think that it's Rand Carthon's fault that Brian Callahan went for it 4 times in a row with a pass instead of a run? And then going into halftime, they still have them on the 1-yard line, and he has a timeout in his pocket that he didn't use, that he could have used for Tony Pollard, and then he ends up just not even using the timeout to potentially get a safety. Do you think that was Rand Carthon's fault? Let me say it. I think this coaching, and I'm not.
You want to let me answer the question? You're just gonna.
Oh yeah. I didn't know if you let me,
You're
man.
just gonna answer it for me.
No, you got it.
Well, I will tell you this. I think the Titans are the worst team in the NFL right now. And I think that everybody, whether it's Brinker, Carthon, Callahan, I think they're all involved. And when you clean house, it's everybody that goes. And I'll say this, I'm a little concerned with, I brought this up yesterday, I'm concerned with some of Brian Callahan's coaching. I am. But but what we're doing here by saying, well, that's Callahan's fault and that's Brinker's fault and that's this. What we're doing is we're accepting the losing. And that's not what I like. If they had scored a touchdown before halftime, you think it would change the game?
No.
Okay.
and that's the other thing about it too. So I want to say this. You were for Calvin Ridley. You were for Tyler Boyd. You were for drafting Tony Pollard. Those were Rand Carthon things.
I was actually for keeping Derrick Henry, but continue.
Oh, me too. I know. You said let the big dog eat, bro. I know that. I 100% agree with you most of the things that you say, so I want you to know that. But my biggest thing is this. It's a new regime. At the very beginning of the season, I said I would be shocked if they had one game out of the first 8 games because they really had a crazy schedule. But we were believing I think we were drinking the Kool-Aid when we saw the 3 touchdowns that my boy threw in the Atlanta game. And so we were like, okay, all right, we got something here. That's the snake oil right there, because we don't know for sure if this guy is the dude.
Who drafted him?
You're right. But let me say this. I don't think it's over yet. So you're going to think I'm an idiot, and I don't care because it doesn't matter. I think let me say this. I think they're going to beat the Patriots, and it's not over yet.
Let me tell you something, T-Dog, and I appreciate your call. I hope they don't. I'm dead serious with what I'm about to say. People aren't going to like this. You're going to say, this is a loser's mentality. But I hope they lose every game the rest of the year. And I'm going to tell you why. Because if they find a way to win 4 or 5 games this year, that'll be enough to give us another year of this. If they lose every game the rest of the way, then even I think the strongest believers will have to step back. That's what I want them to lose every game, because I think it is in the best interest of the Titans for that to happen. 615-737-1025. Speaking of best interests, there's something that nobody seems to want to do anymore in the NFL. And it feels like if you're thinking about the best interest of your organization, this is exactly what you would do. We'll do it next. I'm going to Company 1025 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. So I got a problem with the NFL. You know, somebody tweeted me and said, thank God the Titans didn't listen to you and draft Anthony Richardson. Ha, ha, ha. And I just tweeted the guy back. And I said, I think the Colts ruined him. And we talked a lot about Anthony Richardson leading up to the draft. We had a specific plan for Anthony Richardson. And is it fair to say that the Indianapolis Colts have gone out and done 0% other than drafting him of what the plan for Anthony Richardson was going to be?
I don't know about 0, but
I mean, the plan was to draft Anthony Richardson. Well, the plan was to re-sign Matt Ryan or sign Gardner Minshew, which I guess they signed Gardner Minshew, so you're right, not 0. Draft Anthony Richardson, run right to the podium and say, Gardner Minshew's the starting quarterback, sign Dalton Schultz from the Cowboys, and turn around and hand the ball to Jonathan Taylor 30 times a game after Richardson sits for an entire season.
they ran the ball a lot early in the season before Richardson got hurt.
Well, but if you remember that year before Richardson got hurt, Taylor was out. He was in a contract dispute. So they were running Zach Moss, which again, Zach Moss is fine, but he's not Taylor. You know, my thing was you're going to treat Taylor like Derrick Henry. You're giving him the ball every play. You know, Richardson's going to throw it 14 times in his second year because Gardner Minshew was going to start in year 1. And that takes me to the problem that I have with the NFL. And by the way, that would have been the same thing. The plan here was draft him. Ryan Tannehill is our starting quarterback, period. But we have to have a talk about the evaluating quarterbacks, picking quarterbacks, developing quarterbacks, and everything else that goes into building a quarterback in the NFL. And when I see all these guys fail, whether it's Bryce Young or Kenny Pickett or Zach Wilson or Trey Lance, or I can't imagine that every single one of these guys just happens to suck. I just don't believe that. So I think what that tells us is the development of these quarterbacks is more of a problem with the teams than the reality that, well, yeah, Anthony Richardson sucks, Will Levis sucks, Bryce Young sucks, Zach Wilson sucks, Justin Fields sucks, this one sucks. I think it's more so the teams developing these quarterbacks around the league don't know what they're doing. And I think oftentimes it's because teams are afraid of being honest. Whether it's about being honest openly with the media or even being honest with themselves. I think teams have a hard time with this. I went back and dug up some audio with Chase's help today from Floyd back in the day. If you remember, Steve McNair did not start his first year. Chris Chandler did. Steve McNair did not start his second year. Chris Chandler did. In fact, the Oilers traded the pick or traded Chris Chandler for a pick that ended up being Derek Mason. But he did not start for 2 years because at Alcorn State, he wasn't ready for the NFL. And this is what Floyd said about the evaluation of McNair, the development and plan for McNair. Here's what he said.
When we brought in Steve McNair, I said it'll take him a couple of years to learn, the offense, what we're going to do. It'll take him a couple of years to learn the league. Then we'll be ready to go. Then we'll be off and running. And he was lucky enough to have, the same offense, the same type system, many of the same coaches and things like that. So that helped.
We told the press that night, we said, now don't come to us every week if we don't win and say, when's McNair going to start? I'm telling you, McNair will not play this year. I said, he'll play a little bit next year, and then we'll go from there. And sure enough, Steve ended up playing like maybe the fourth quarter of a few games and maybe half of a game or whatever.
Again, Floyd said, I drafted him and I went right to the media and I said, he's not playing for 2 years. Do not come after every game and say, when's he going to play? The Titans drafted Will Levis. You know what they said? They said, On Monday, which was OTAs, on Monday, Ryan will be the number 1 quarterback, Malik will be the number 2 quarterback, and Will be the number 3 quarterback. You know what the Colts said when they drafted Anthony Richardson? At 21 years old with 12 starts in college under his belt? Well, we think, he's going to play right away, and we think it'll be better, and we think it'll be... You tell me. If Steve McNair's team had said, we're going to take this guy to Alcorn State, and he absolutely lit it up. We think he's 2 years away, and we got to develop him, and we know he's raw, and we have to develop him, because everybody knew that Anthony Richardson was raw when he was coming out of Florida. Even the people like me that absolutely loved Anthony Richardson. We knew this is going to be a process now. This is not plug and play. Jaden Daniels has like 7 years of college football under his belt. Richardson had 1. And yet, Indy throws him out there before he's ready. He stinks, does something embarrassingly stupid with the tap out, and now they have to bench him. And they had to bench him because, again, he tapped out and said, oh, yeah, I was tired. And I'm like, oh, God. But that's a 22-year-old rookie mistake. Should have lied. Should have said something else. And because he had to tell the truth, they have to bench him. And now they've ruined him. Why does nobody in the NFL ever let these quarterbacks develop anymore? Andy Reid drafted Patrick Mahomes and ran right to the podium and said, Alex Smith is the quarterback. He's not playing this year. I think, I could be wrong about this, I think it's worked out pretty well for Kansas City. Maybe they were onto something. Tom Brady said this summer, one of the best things that ever happened to him was sitting behind Drew Bledsoe for an entire year. Like, again, I'm not saying everyone's going to beat Tom Brady even if they sit out. But how many of these guys don't really get that opportunity to sit and watch? How many of these teams don't have plans for quarterbacks? They just draft them, and it's like, oh, this will be great. That's the problem with the league. I'm convinced of it. You cannot tell me that all these evaluators and all these college football people and all these, that everybody sits there and says, hey, that guy's a first rounder, 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 and then them all stink. I just don't believe that. I understand there may be a guy like a Ryan Leaf who will tell you, I wasn't mature enough to play in the NFL when I got drafted. I'm sure that happens, which, by the way, that's part of the evaluation process too, to figure out whether or not these guys are mature enough. Talking about the teams when they're looking at these guys. But I think what happens oftentimes is teams don't have quarterbacks and they just say, take them, take Johnny, go. And sometimes that works. And sometimes those guys are ready. You know, Mariota was ready to play when he got drafted out of Oregon. And I think Levis was probably ready to play out of Kentucky. But again, you put him on a team with no right tackle. How's that going to work? So I keep going back to the Floyd thing. I keep going back to Andy Reid. And I see a lot of teams around the league do something that I absolutely would never, ever, ever do. Which is I would never let a GM and a coach on the hot seat pick a quarterback. Never. Chicago is going to fire Matt Eberflus at the end of the year. When they do, Caleb Williams will have a new coach and a new offensive coordinator and a new offensive system and a new everything. Continuity matters for those guys too. Again, it's not an accident that Patrick Mahomes has Andy Reid as his coach. So again, when it comes to what these teams do and what these how they build, I keep wondering why in the NFL nobody ever wants to develop a quarterback anymore. Nobody ever wants to say, hey, we might be better off changing our offensive coordinator, but we're not going to because we want this quarterback to stay in the same system. Veteran quarterbacks can change coordinators and be okay. Young quarterbacks, I don't know. Again, where are the plans when it comes to develop these guys now? Carolina fired their coach in the middle of last year. Where are the plans? And I don't know if it's just the impatience of the league or the changing of the contracts or the rookie wage scale, or I don't know. But for some reason, these teams just have no interest in developing a quarterback. Buffalo was okay with blowing up a playoff team in order to take the lumps with Josh Allen at quarterback. How many other teams are willing to do that? And that's the problem. That if you don't immediately draft Joe Burrow, if you don't immediately draft Jaden Daniels, if you don't immediately draft CJ Stroud and get it right the first time, now we're changing everything, and I don't believe in that. And nobody sits quarterbacks anymore. And Bill Belichick hires a defensive coach to be the offensive coordinator. And we think it's all these guys suck? What I think it is I think that most of the people in this league suck in terms of the coaches and owners and general managers and these guys that don't have plans for these young quarterbacks. Maybe I'm wrong about Anthony Richardson. Maybe he's a bum. I don't know. But I don't think Indy ever gave him a chance. 615-737-1025, Stillman and Company. And speaking of Richardson, there is one thing that if I was the Titans, I'd be thinking about. We'll get to next. Stillman and Company on 1025 The Game.
that I think if we had the first pick in the draft, we'd be taking the same guy probably.
If that guy's gone at 3, someone trades up to get Richardson, what do you do at 4?
Boy, that's always a tough hypothetical because, until that moment hits and it's really upon you in the real world, you have to realize, you're still thinking on your feet some. I mean, obviously, we're going to take Levis or trade down. I shouldn't say honestly, but I think we'd take Will Levis if we liked him. We did, yeah.
Jim Irsay talking about Will Levis. That was when they drafted Anthony Richardson. He said, we would have taken Richardson with the number 1 pick. Okay, what would you have done if Anthony Richardson wasn't there? Well, we would have, you never know what would have happened if it didn't happen, but we would have taken, we probably would have taken Will Levis. I mean, hey, at least Irsay's straight up, right? Like telling you, hey, we would have taken Will Levis, we would have taken Anthony Richardson. This is going to be an unpopular opinion, and I don't care. If they were going to take Will Levis, if they couldn't get Anthony Richardson, do you think they'd be interested in taking Will Levis for Anthony Richardson? Indianapolis can say all they want. No. This is just a reset for Richardson. Joe's going to start, but hey, we're still committed to the long-term plan with Anthony Richardson all they want. Let me say this. I've talked at length about my plan for Richardson. You know what wasn't included in my plan for Richardson? Him sitting in year 2. Even when Floyd said with McNair it's going to be 2 years, I don't think you could have done that with Richardson. I think Richardson would have had to play by year 2. Now, I would have set expectations pretty low and say, hey, man, we're going to run the ball. We're going to bring this kid along. Like, this is basically his rookie year, and we got to treat it that way and all of that. But they decided to go the opposite direction, and that's their business, not mine. But I keep asking, if you were going to take Levis, if Richardson wasn't there, and even though you say you're not done with Richardson, I'm not convinced that you're not, or that you really are. If that's the case, would you be interested? Because I was thinking about Richard. I love Richardson's talent. I do. And if you trade for him, you don't have the onus of, well, we drafted him 4th, so we have to, you don't have any of that. Dallas doesn't have the onus of playing Trey Lance because he was taken 3rd overall. So I thought to myself, I'm like, okay, what did quarterbacks that a team gave up on a year after being so I looked at Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett went with a 4th to the Eagles for a 3rd and 2 6ths. I meant to do the math on this, and I guess I forgot what the actual value of that pick exchange was. So let's just say Kenny Pickett for a 4th. I don't know if I want to give away a 4th round pick for Anthony Richardson. I would if Indy was like, no, we're not taking Levis, but we'll do it for a 4th. I would, but I keep thinking about, well, if you liked Levis coming out and you, Indianapolis, you think we're stupid anyways, so maybe you think that we've messed up Levis. You don't like Richardson. We don't like Levis. What do you think? Because I think there's still something there with Anthony Richardson. I don't think you lead the NFL in completion, in yards per completion by accident. Now, I also don't think that you complete 44% of your passes by accident either. So there's a lot of work that's got to get done. But I'm an Anthony Richardson believer still. And I think the Colts screwed up Andrew Luck. And I don't understand why people don't bring that up. The same organization that screwed up Andrew Luck, you think it's just impossible that they screwed this guy up. One texter says, Green Bay University, a.k.a. the QB school, has thrived at drafting quarterbacks and letting them sit, also paired with a good front office. Do you know what is unique to Green Bay that I think allows them to develop quarterbacks slowly? Ian, you want to take a stab at that? What is unique about Green Bay that allows Green Bay to sit quarterbacks and not have to rush them and not have to play them and not have to. What is unique to Green Bay? Nobody else in the league has this.
They don't have an owner.
No owner. No owner to say, well, I mean, I drafted him number 4 overall, so I want him go out there and play quarterback and see what happens. And all these teams that are screwing up at quarterback, like Jacksonville, hiring Urban Meyer to be the head coach for Trevor Lawrence's rookie year. Tennessee, Carolina, Indianapolis. What do most of these teams have in common? You wouldn't consider them to be great ownership-led franchises. That's not a coincidence. Dustin says, hell no! Levis isn't a quitter, and Richardson is. Let me say this. It was a bad look what Richardson did on Sunday. If I was GM of the Colts, and you know how much I love Richardson, if I was GM of the Colts, I would even tell the coach, like, hey, I don't know how we tell the locker room that it's okay for the quarterback to sub himself out. But I also would be disappointed in the coach because the coach has to go to Richardson and say, hey, man, we're going to tell people that your ankle flared up. That's what we're going to do. Got it? Capiche? And the fact that they didn't do that, again, to me, is a sign of Shane Steichen and his stupidity as a coach. And here's what's crazy, too. If Indy had gone with the plan to go with Minshew and to sit Richardson the first year, they almost made the playoffs with Gardner Minshew as the quarterback last year. Nobody would have complained. Nobody would have complained. Chris says, let Levis go to a different team and watch him thrive. The coaching staff stinks. Look at Malik Willis. I mean, it's hard for me to argue that. I think Levis is better than Malik. I think he's got more talent than Malik. And Malik looks like a bulldog out there playing quarterback for the Green Bay Packers when he goes in there. I mean, just surgical watching Malik Willis when he goes out there for the Green Bay Packers. But that's just me. I would be willing to give up on Levis to see what Richardson's got. 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company, 615-737-1025. Hey, we got a lot of college football to get excited about. Tune in to 93.3 Totally Hits Nashville this Saturday for MTSU football. The Blue Raiders are up against UTEP on the road. Pre-game at 1 o'clock. Kickoff is at 2:30. MTSU football coverage on 93.3 Totally Hits Nashville is presented by Sloan's Motorcycle ATV. And this week's college football game of the week is Saturday at 2:30 on 94.9 The Fan. The world's largest outdoor cocktail party, Florida and Georgia, presented by Twin Peaks, which might be the world's largest indoor cocktail party. Take your tailgate to Twin Peaks, home of 29-degree drafts and wall-to-wall sports. Stillman and Company, 102.5, The Game. Tomorrow, it's your chance to participate in Preds Pick to Click. If you correctly guess a Preds player that scores a goal in the game tomorrow night, you'll win a pair of tickets to an upcoming Preds home game. Jason Fitz joins us, Yahoo Sports and Fox Sports Radio, here on the program. Fitz, you know I loved Anthony Richardson going into last year's draft. Loved. But I said that if I drafted him, if I was the Titans and I had drafted him, I would have run to the podium and said, Ryan Tannehill's a starting quarterback. Indianapolis should have run to the podium and said, Gardner Minshew's a starting quarterback. They didn't do that. They played him. He got hurt. They haven't gotten him a tight end. They don't run the ball as much as they should with Jonathan Taylor. They got in a contract dispute with him while Richardson was a rookie. I think they've ruined him. I'm convinced of it. Do you think Richardson is he's a bust because he stinks, or he's a bust because Indianapolis has set him up to fail?
I think Indianapolis set him up to fail. And the evidence on that is pretty easy because they didn't, to your point, they didn't do any of the things that they were supposed to do when it comes to actually getting him the help and time he needed, right? Like the rule is 24 games. College guy told me the other day, the NFL scouts now are looking for 24 games of footage to figure out if a player is any good, right? They want 24 games of college tape whenever they can get it. If you look at the reality of Anthony Richardson, if you combine his college and pro stats, he hasn't started 24 games combined at those two levels. So, like, you got 23 games all of a sudden for Anthony Richardson. They've ruined it. They had to know what their long-term business plan was. Like, they had to understand what their goals were, and they haven't done any of that in the way they've mismanaged him. So I think, frankly, we'll never know if he could have been any good because the Colts ruined him.
Do you think that when the Colts say, we're not done with him, we still believe, but we're going to bench him for a little bit, do you think there's any hope in Anthony Richardson?
No, like that never works, right? Like, I mean, look, we saw Bryce come back in, and that looked drastically different, you know, and we hear this all the time, but everyone's like, oh, we're going to bring him back in. But for what? The problem is that's not the game plan of what you needed from Anthony Richardson from the first place. What you needed from Anthony Richardson was time on task. That's the thing he didn't have at college. So if he doesn't have time on task at college, then what's he supposed to do now when he's still not getting time on task? So, like, the way you fix some quarterbacks, maybe you think you'll bench him, but you had to know, Chris Ballard had to know when he was drafted that they would take the ups and downs. And in fact, he told Jory Epstein, one of our insiders, that when he was drafted, what Chris Ballard said at the time is that you've got to have an understanding of the ebbs and flows that are going to happen. And now they've lost that understanding. 1 year for what? To like barely make the playoffs this year? What's the point of that?
Fitz, around here, it's very negative in Titan land. And the Titans are very bad. We all know this. And yet, I'm of the mindset that the Titans should clean house and start over at the end of the year. And that includes quarterback, GM, coach. And I feel bad for Callahan because I think he's a good guy. But again, if I'm firing the GM and I'm starting over, I'm not going to tell the GM that he has to work with a certain coach. And yet I keep getting told that Rand Carthon and Chad Brinker have not had enough time to prove that they're not good at their jobs as running a football team, because Vrabel was here last year and it was all Vrabel's fault. Do you believe that?
No. And like, I think at some point, man, you got to have, like, what are you hanging your hat on? What's the thing that suddenly makes you say, hey, I've done this and I've done this better than anybody? And I would ask, like, what can Rand Carthon right now hang his hat on and say, I've done this better than anybody? I heard, I think it was Joe Fortenbaugh on ESPN Radio. So I'm stealing this directly from Joe Fortenbaugh. But he said, for all the grief that we give that Derrick Henry was not signed by the Dallas Cowboys, let's remember that a terrible Tennessee Titans team with the GM that was a running back of the NFL decided that he didn't want to keep Derrick Henry in the building. It didn't cost that much. Like, we could talk all day long about what Derrick wanted, what's best for him. That's fine. But show me the transaction that I'm going to look at and say, oh, Rand Carthon, true brilliance there. Like, it just has happened. And by the way, I don't think you're wrong. I think the worst thing you could do as an organization when you press reset is do a partial reset. Like, if you start this whole, well, I'm going to let this guy bring in this thing and I'm going to let this person do that, like, I want this person to have control, like, there's just never any accountability. We've talked about this before with other teams that, you know, you fire the coaching staff and then the GM picks the new coach and then that coach isn't good. And so the GM gets fired, but then that coach is like, well, you know, we got to bring in a different GM. And all of a sudden you have this never ending chasing your tail cycle of just stupidity. So I agree with you. Like, the only way to get a fresh restart from an organization is to fire everybody and then decide, okay, from this day moving forward, who's in charge, and let that person make every decision trickle down the entire way with a 5 or 6 year game plan. And I don't think the Titans have ever done that.
So you would be in favor of a total reset?
Yes, 100%.
And you wouldn't say that it hasn't been enough time?
No, you don't get time anymore in the NFL. We all know that. Hell, Anthony Richardson didn't get time. No, I'm in favor of a massive, complete reset. Like when your team stinks, and I don't care whether we're talking about the Titans. I don't, you know my Raiders fan. I mean, I don't care I don't care if we're talking about Antonio Pierce and Tom Telesco, who are new together and had no time. I don't care. At some point, if you look around, you know internally inside the room, you know if a guy has air quotes it, and you know if a guy does not have that thing. You know if they have the X factor. And if you're looking around that building saying, man, our roster stinks, I'm not really sure if we have that. If you're not sure, then you're sure. Like if you don't have that thing that you're like, I will run through walls for this guy. This guy has managed to get the pulse of the entire organization. You don't have that, then you don't have anything. And I believe, patience worked for Dan Campbell, for example. Second season started 1-6. Why did patience work? Because internally, inside the building, everybody turned around. Everybody that was involved in that process, even at the time, would tell you, man, no, there's something special here. We're going to give it time. There's something special. If you're not looking around saying, no, we're going to give it time, there's something special about Rand Carthon, and I don't believe anybody is, then what do you do? Like, if you're saying, hey, we're going to give it time, maybe to see how it works out, that's much different than we have to give this guy time because this guy is great at his job. And you tell me, you're around that team. I don't get that vibe, that feel anywhere.
No, I don't. But again, I've been kind of down on Rand for a long time, and I told everybody, okay, prove me wrong. Let's see this offseason. They spent all that money. They told everybody they were going to be good, and they're significantly worse. And, there's this kind of this big argument about, well, they've got to reset the roster. They got to rebuild the roster. This is a tear down. And they got to build a culture. They got to build a foundation. And they got to build it. And the way I look at it is when you got the job, you were a Josh Dobbs fumble away from the playoffs. Like it or not, John Robinson was fired. He was in first place. And so you were a Josh Dobbs fumble away. You won 6 games. So you got worse from year 1 to year 2. And now you're the worst team in the league. To me, that tells me you can't do the job. And yet everybody wants to compare them to the Lions, who I think they started on a hard reset. Traded Matthew Stafford, had all those first-round draft picks. They want to compare it to Cincinnati, where Callahan came from, where they were the worst team in the NFL. And I don't see Joe Burrow in this draft that's going to save everybody. And I don't see, the foundation being built. And I see a bad football team that doesn't know if it's pumped or stuffed. That's what I see. And for some reason, a lot of people think that it's crazy that I see that.
Yeah, here's the old adage a former scout told me a few years ago. Look around your team and ask yourself right now, how many players on your team would be starting on a high-level playoff team? Like starting and making a difference on a high-level playoff team. And when you run that exercise, you go up and down the roster, you get a really good idea of exactly where your team is. I think if Titans fans looked in the mirror with that mindset, how many of these guys would be starting for the Lions as they're currently constructed? How many of these guys will be starting for San Francisco? How many of these guys will be starting for even Kansas City with an abject disaster of an offense, right? Like how many of these guys would be difference-making players on a playoff caliber team? I think when you apply that exercise, you get a really good idea of where your team actually is. And that's a hard pill to swallow. It stinks because the other thing, Jared, you said that you're right about, this isn't just my opinion. I've talked to so many people about this year's draft. I was told the other day by somebody that is incredibly smart with quarterbacks. I asked the other day, number 1 quarterback in this year's draft. I don't even care who you've got as your number 1. Where would they have been in last year's draft? 6th, the 6th best quarterback in last year's draft. That was the answer. And that's not the first time I've gotten that answer. I've talked to college football coaches at major programs that are telling me the same thing. They all realize that this year's draft class at quarterback is not good, right? It's just maybe somebody's going to hit the life lottery with Cam Ward and there's this moment, or Shedeur Sanders. But there are, as we sit today, there are 10 teams in the NFL that have won 2 or less football games. 6 of those teams have lost at least 3 straight games. The barrel of suck in the league this year is like nothing we've seen before. There are a ton of teams that are going to be desperate, and a bunch of them need a quarterback. And the funny thing is, there is no savior. There is no Joe Burrow that's going to turn this thing around. If your team stinks today, I don't even care if you got a bunch of money to spend in free agency. Everybody has a bunch of money to spend in free agency. Great players rarely make free agency. Free agency is where you get 1 or 2 things. If you look around your team and you honestly say, hey, we need 18 new starters to be a playoff team, and there are a bunch of teams that need that. ask yourself this: in a home run of an offseason, in the best offseason you've ever seen, how many can you really get? 5? I mean, and that's a home run. So you're talking about a 3-year rebuild for any of these teams, not just the Titans. For any of these teams that are at that level, you're talking about a 3-year rebuild. So now you got to ask yourself: you want Rand Carthon running this for the next 3 years? Will there be patience for 3 years of a rebuild? And if the answer is no, then man, get everybody out the door and start this whole thing over, all of it. Because the worst thing you can do is get yourself to where you're winning 5-6 games every single year. Like that is the mediocrity none of us can be stuck in and find any joy. I don't think that there's an easy way out of any of this for teams that stink.
Do you think it would have been better off, Fitz, for the Titans if they had just come out and said, hey, we're tearing the team down? Henry, Tannehill, Byard, we're moving on. Vrabel, we're moving on. And this is going to be painful, but this is what we're going to do. Do you think fans would be accepting what we're watching now if they had just been honest? Although I think they thought they were going to be good. I think they're surprised how bad they stink. But do you think if they had said that on the front end that they'd be in a better spot now?
Yes, I do. But I also think, to your point, I don't think it's I don't think it's intentional misinformation, I should say. I do think this. A lot of times coaches look at film when they take a job and they think, you know what, things are pretty good there. And then they get inside the building and they start looking around. They're like, nope, things aren't very good. This happens a lot, right? Like, so everybody getting in the room thinking they're going to be competitive and then realizing they're not, that's not a new thing. That's pretty common. So the question is, how do you get through it? And yeah, there's going to be 2 questions that have to be asked. Like, should they have been honest? And I mean, I know that nobody wants to look at this yet, but like, what did they do with the quarterback position last year in the draft when they could have drafted one? Like that's, I'm sorry, that's just going to be part of the conversation. We don't know how that plays out for several years, but if I've been tough on Will Levis nationally. I've been tough on Will Levis on this show. I am tough on Will Levis. I do not think Will Levis is a quality starting quarterback in the NFL. So I'm just looking around now saying, man, these roars are going to get louder and louder and louder if it turns out that some of those quarterbacks that were available turn out to be even better. It's going to be louder and louder if you think that, man, the team could have tried to make a move and they didn't. Because the only thing that can quickly turn the team around is suddenly finding your CJ Stroud. And like, if they had any shot at one last year and didn't take it, then that's irresponsible. And, frankly, there is no CJ Stroud next year. So yes, it would have been better if they'd been honest, but we're also going to have to ask ourselves for the next 5 years, you're going to be eyeballing all the quarterbacks and saying, did they do the right thing?
Mm-hmm. Jason Fitz from Yahoo Sports, Fox Sports Radio. Great stuff, Fitz. Appreciate your time, bud.
Appreciate you, brother. Have a great week.
Yep, Jason Fitz on our program, 615-737-1025. We continue along. Stillman and Company, 1025 The Game.
They don't really want to see you lose to get it. They think that you're planning to lose to get it.
I understand.
Your thoughts on those?
I understand that from the outside looking in, that's easy to say when you don't have any dog in a fight. But I'll say this: I've never been anywhere, and I've been on some teams that have lost games. Where at any point that is part of our thought process. That's not for me to think about. If people out there want to think about it, or that's an organizational, they're looking at different things, that's fine. That's their job. But our job is to go put the best product on the field every single week, play as hard as we can, do everything we can to win a game. And I'll always take that stance. That is always what I believe in, for the same reason I just said. There's a bunch of guys where this is their job and their livelihood, and it means something to them. And they put themselves on the line, they put their bodies on the line, they fight through injuries. And at no point would that ever be something that anybody in a football coaching or locker room would ever think about or try to do. That's not how this works for us. There's too much at stake and too much at risk for anybody to do anything other than everything they possibly can to go win a game.
All right, Brian Callahan says they're not tanking, says he's never tanked before. I guess that would include Cincinnati. So I'm not on the YouTube chat today. I'm sorry. I bet it's popping today, though. I bet the Chris Sanders interview was just popping on the YouTube chat today. Not on the YouTube chat, but the distinguished gentleman, he says there's no tank in place. Craig's up next here on our program. Craig, thank you for waiting. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd just like to, thank you for taking my call, but I'd like to agree with you completely on developing a quarterback in the NFL. And that it takes a year or 2 years. I agree. Where I'll disagree is where you were talking to Chris Sanders earlier. And if you have that position of giving a quarterback 2 years or whatever, why wouldn't you have the same position for a new GM or a new coach?
Because this is his second year as GM. This is his second year. This is his second year as GM.
Well, you say a second year, you wouldn't agree that there was a lot of minutia involved when Vrabel was here and who really was the GM? You wouldn't agree to that?
No, I would agree that when he took the job, he took it to work with Mike Vrabel, but that he was the general manager of the football team. It has been reported by Diana Rossini that the team was built around his vision, and that it was Vrabel who went to Amy Adams Strunk and said that he thought he should be GM because he's earned it, and that irked Amy Adams Strunk. So if it irked Amy Adams Strunk that Vrabel wanted full control, that means he didn't have it. So that means Rand was the GM.
Okay, well, let's say that's true.
Okay.
And I agree with you. If you're going to rip it, we will say that's true. If you're going to rip it out, I agree that you rip the whole thing out.
So then you agree with me?
Well, I just don't agree that you rip it out until after next year, because you think you're going to hit the lottery and get a great GM and a great coach and a great this and a great staff. You're just going to roll the dice and hit the lottery and get all the best of the best, or not?
Because I believe that you have a better shot of hitting the lottery than you do of winning with the guys that are running the team now.
Well, and I'm no Rand Carthon apologist. I'll make that clear.
Kind of sounds like you are, Craig. Hate to say it, but again, like I people are like, well, I mean, who are you going to hire? Is it going to be any better? Can't be worse, can it? You're the worst team in the league. And by the way, I would hire somebody with experience, which would give me hope that they know what they're doing. You know, the one thing that Mike Mularkey and his old Paw coaching staff didn't get the credit for, which they should have, is they had experience. They knew what they were doing. Like, did you like everything they did? Of course not. Did they know what they were doing in teaching a young team how to win? Yes. Chuck is up next. Thank you for calling. What's up, Chuck?
Hey, how's it going today, Jared?
Good. Go ahead.
Hey, Jared, my question is, you mentioned before about the two quarterbacks you saw that were ready when they first got to the pros. You said Peyton Manning and Joe Burrow.
They're the two that the organizations couldn't screw them up.
Yeah, I want to add one more to that. To me, Andrew Luck.
Andrew Luck got screwed up.
Yeah, he got screwed up, and I'm saying he got us into the playoffs. I think they got to the championship. I think his second or third year.
Right.
but they never
Andrew Luck got
improved
to.
the.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Chuck. Thank you for your call. Andrew Luck got to an AFC title game. I got it. But the thing about Burrow and Manning, and look, maybe the Bengals end up screwing up Burrow, but he did get to a Super Bowl. Burrow and Manning overcame traditionally bad teams with bad owners in small markets that nobody expects anything of. And I don't know that anybody else could do that. Andrew Luck was screwed up. Like, Andrew Luck was screwed up by the Colts. That's why it's like, oh, Richardson sucks. And it's like, right, the same guys that screwed up Andrew Luck have screwed up Richardson. But the Colts are not culpable at all. Come on now. It was Burrow and Manning, the two guys that were organizational proof. If Burrow went to Carolina, Burrow would be good, and so would Carolina. If Manning came to the Titans, Manning would be good, and so would the Titans. Everybody else, it's like, could Josh Allen have done that with the Jets? And there's a difference. Jared versus Joe is next. If I haven't done enough yelling and arguing, we have even more. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling Game Nashville studios. It's 5 o'clock on a Wednesday, which means it's time for Jared versus Joe. Caroline is here. Hello, Caroline.
Hello, how we doing?
Outstanding. I do want to reward the people that sat through that last commercial break. Be caller 5 right now at 615-737-1025, and you'll win a pair of tickets. See the Predators taking on Edmonton tomorrow night at Bridgestone Arena. Get excited about that. Joseph Robinette Rexroad Jr. joins us for Jared versus Joe. Joe, I want you to know you have been in my thoughts and you have been in my prayers this entire day. You know, the injury that you suffered kind of, I feel similarly to the way that Jameis Winston felt after Deshaun Watson tore his Achilles. I'm going to pray for you, and I'm going to uplift you because I see the way you work and I see the way that you fight.
That is very inspiring.
I just want you to know that for your torn meniscus that you suffered walking up the steps. So,
yes, thank you.
We'll keep you in our prayers. Time for Jared versus Joe.
Jared Stillman versus Joe Rexroad. Now on Stillman and Company.
On ESPN
102.5 The Game.
Jared versus Joe is presented by Pella Windows and Doors in Nashville. Caroline.
Man, I hope I never get old. You know, you're getting old when you tear your meniscus walking up the stairs.
It sucks.
Yeah. Joe, start with you. What message is Rand Carthon sending to the fan base with his "the ball didn't bounce our way" narrative that he is selling?
Oh boy. Well, with that particular question, I think he's just I don't think he's thinking about the message he's sending. I think he's just saying stuff and making excuses. And if he were thinking about sending a message to the fan base, he would not say those words. He did say somewhere in that interview with Nick Suss, like, stick with us, be patient. And that's fine. I mean, I would expect someone in his position to say something like that. But then what you do is you pair that with, look, we thought we were going to be better. We this has not worked out the way we hoped. We've got to be better. I've got to be better. And we're going to work our hardest to bring you a great football team in Nashville. Something like that. You know, stick with us, be patient, and then accountability, that's fine. Stick with us, be patient, and the ball didn't bounce our way today after 52-14. That's problematic.
I think what it says is it says Rand Carthon's not interested in being accountable at all. That's what it tells me. And it also tells me that the message, you know what, Caroline, the question you asked was the message to the fans, right?
Yep.
Here's the message to the fans. Fans, you're stupid. That's the message. Because we talked about this last year when he said the ball didn't bounce their way. And I said, that is so offensive. After a year of watching Andre Dillard and Jalen Duncan play left tackle, Aaron Brewer play center, you just fired Mike Vrabel, the most popular coach in the history of the Titans. You just fired Mike Vrabel, and you're going to say, well, the ball didn't bounce our way. And I'm like, that is insulting. That is saying, hey, fans, I think you are so stupid that I am going to tell you the ball didn't bounce our way. And I think you're so stupid, you're going to hear that and say, you know what? He's right. The ball didn't bounce our way. If the ball had bounced our way, we would have won all these games that we lost because of Andre Dillard. And that was bad enough. And then when he said it again, it's like, I think you're really stupid, fans, because I said it last year and I'm going to say it again. And if you look at that entire Q&A in the Tennessean, there was in no point did he say, to Joe's point, hey, we did this. We thought it would be that. We messed up. We apologize. We're sorry for where we are. We thought we would be better. Instead, it's like, fans, you got to understand, I got to flip this roster. And so that's why we suck. I mean, even then when he was asked about the DeAndre Hopkins and Ernest Jones trade, that's the perfect time to say, hey, we thought we were going to be better this year. We weren't. We had the opportunity to garner future assets, and we felt like that was in the best interest of the future of the Tennessee Titans. That's totally fine. Instead, he said, well, we need more draft picks, so now we've made 3 trades, and we've got 8 picks. Like, dude, those are day 3 picks. The value, according to the trade chart, of the Malik Willis pick, because that's the 3rd pick he's talking about, the value is 1. Those picks stink. Like, look, is it, better than nothing? Sure. But to act like, we're going to turn the team around with 5th round picks and 7th round picks? Ran Carthon is either stupid or he thinks everybody else is stupid or both. And when he said the ball didn't bounce our way for the 2nd time, the message is, fans, you're stupid.
Yeah, the only thing that I do see a difference in those two. Like last year, he was put in a terrible spot, and he mentioned that whatever they lost like a bunch of 1-possession games,
7-1 score games.
So last year, like it's still like no one wants to hear that stuff, but at least it's like the context is correct. Like at least it's like you could look at some of those games and you can find a play or two in some of those games, like a lot of NFL games, and say, maybe a little better luck. It would have been better for them.
You mean like if the ball had bounced back to Kyle Phillips in the Ravens game on the road in London last year? Yeah,
there you go. But at least that's like somewhat defensible. But yes, he was talking, and I am on the record. I already was on the record on our show today. I'm feeling pretty dirty here. I feel like I need a shower because I'm taking Jared's side in an argument with D-Mace, but I don't agree with D-Mace. I don't think that Ran Carthon was making some big picture comment. He was talking after the Lions game and talking about plays in the Lions game, and it was
there's a figure of speech, the ball didn't bounce our way. In that exact quote, he's like, they fumbled it, it went back to them. We fumbled it, it went to them. He's literally talking about the ball. Like that is not a metaphor. He is talking about the fumbles bouncing to them and not to you. And again, I just think you're telling the fans they're stupid because it's insulting. Like, do you think he says that to Amy? Do you think when Amy says, Rand, what happened? Why did we get beat by 38 points after you just spent $230 million? And he's like, Miss Amy, the ball didn't bounce our way. Do you think that flies with her?
Hope not.
Well, she should have done her homework, so there's that.
I don't think the ball didn't bounce our way is a good enough excuse when the ball literally didn't bounce your way. But it's especially not a good excuse when you get blown out by 40 points.
When the ball doesn't bounce your way, usually you don't have to tell people that because we saw it. Like if the manager of the Boston Red Sox after the World Series and the ball went through Bill Buckner's legs said, well, the ball just didn't bounce our way. Well, that is true. Yeah, like that. You know what? We all saw it. Now, I still think he got fired anyways. But again, like we all saw it. We understand. This, we all saw it. The ball didn't bounce when Jahmyr Gibbs ran 70 yards up the sidelines untouched. The ball didn't bounce when Khalif Raymond ran 90 yards on a punt return. The ball didn't bounce. And I even asked Callahan about it, and even Callahan was like, yeah, I can feel that way sometimes, but no, I don't really believe that. Caroline,
honestly, credit to Brian Callahan for saying that. Not completely throwing Ran Carthon under the bus, but at least acknowledging, that's not what happened. But everyone was okay with Ran Carthon saying that at his end of year press conference last year. Like everyone was okay with Ran Carthon keeping their plan a secret and locked behind closed doors. Now, not everybody's okay with it. It's crazy what happens when you stink.
Yeah, the idea of we have the secret under lock and key, that works until we see that the secret is Al Capone's vault and you're Geraldo Rivera. Like that's what this has become. Caroline, what's next?
Okay. So Jared ran a poll on Twitter. 51% of people would rather have Ran Carthon and Chad Brinker running the Titans. 49% said Jared Stillman. So Jared, I will ask you, who would be a better general manager of the Titans, Ran Carthon and Chad Brinker or Joe Rexrode?
Boy, that's tough. I'll tell you, Joe, that's a very good question, Caroline. I'm going to go with Joe just because I don't think it can get worse than it is now. I really don't. And like, I don't think I would say I don't know football. I would say the three of us don't know football, like to the level that you have to know football to do that job, right? Like we can watch the games and say, oh, the coach should have gone for it on 4th down. But like, can we look at a left guard and say, well, his hand placement's probably not good enough to be, our left guard. We need a left guard who's got better hand placement. Like we can't do that, right?
Right.
Okay. So that being said, I'm not sure these guys can do that either. And, I use right tackle as the example. I yelled and yelled and yelled and yelled and yelled all off season. We all know it. And I was right and they were wrong. But it was funny because it's like this year I didn't give them any benefit of the doubt in the offseason. And people kept telling me you have to have faith in Bill Callahan. And I'm like, I gave them the benefit of the doubt last year when they said, oh no, Dillard, he just didn't get a chance in Philly and Brewer the move to center will be better for him. And so I'm like, okay, I don't agree with it, but they say well, I'm not doing that this year. And I just cannot imagine that if Joe Rexrode was running the team, that Joe Rexrode would have completely ignored right tackle. I don't think that Joe Rexrode, if he was running the team, would have drafted a running back with a top 100 pick if he had Derrick Henry at running back. I don't think if Joe Rexrode was running the team that Joe Rexrode would have drafted a guard with the 11th overall pick. I just don't think that the level of incompetence that we've seen from the Titans and the lack of accountability and really the lack of articulating a plan to the fans, I just don't think Joe would have done all of that. And it's such a low bar. I'll go Joe. It can't get worse. Joe, please take over the Titans.
Yeah, look, I know that everybody's mad at this front office right now with good reason. And so I think it is funny that, like, the poll ended up close. But, like, if you're seriously asking this question, then no, I would be much worse than these guys. The one thing.
Well, I'll ask you, would you rather have Ran and Chad Brinker or Jared running the Titans?
I mean, you can put in. I'm not going to specifically insult Jared.
I'm telling you, it would not be worse if I was running the team. I am dead serious about how. How could it be worse?
Jared, this is where again you take the wheel as Toonces and you just jerk it off the. You know what I'm saying?
What's up?
You jerk the wheel. Let's not make that a drop. But you take the wheel and you turn the car sharply. How about that? Yes. Look, I've heard you say multiple times, these guys, quote, don't know football.
They don't.
I mean, Jared, these guys played college football. They played pro football. They've been in professional football organizations for decades. That's you talk about Rand, and you know what? There's some truth to what you said. There's some truth to what you said about Rand saying what he said, thinking people are stupid. When you say things like these guys, quote, don't know football, you're doing the same thing. You're assuming people are stupid because that's just a stupid thing to say. And it doesn't mean that they're good at this. Right now, it hasn't gone well, so maybe they're not good. You can, quote, know football, as they obviously both do, and still not do a good job and make bad choices. But if I was them, I'll tell you one thing that you pointed out in their choices. What I would have done at right tackle is I would have gone to one of the guys who was objectively agreed upon as one of the greatest offensive line coaches in the history of the NFL, and I would have gone with his tape study and film study on him and the other players we have, and I would have acted on his advice, which I'm assuming happened. And obviously it has not worked out, and you have broken your arm many times patting yourself on the back for crying about right tackle. But, I mean, the idea that these guys, quote, don't know football is pretty insulting, man.
I mean,
it's
Taylor Lewan played in the NFL. I don't think Taylor Lewan knows football enough to run a football team.
Taylor Lewan has never been a scout. Both of these guys have spent years in scouting. Their entire existence was analyze this player, talk to this player, watch the film, go to the Senior Bowl, whatever it is, and let's get into the absolute granular nitty-gritty of this player and that player. I don't have any sort of background like that. None of us do talking right now. So this is a funny thing to talk about, but like if we're seriously talking about it, you've got to be freaking kidding me.
No, I'm serious. These guys don't know football. These guys know snake oil. They're con artists. That's what they are.
Okay.
They do not know football. And I would love to know, like, I'd love to really know, like, what did these guys actually do in Green Bay and San Francisco? And how valued,
I'm sure what they really just ordered pizza and took out dry cleaning,
and
probably.
how
in
valued,
your fantasy world that you've created here.
how valued was their opinion? Like, how much did Kyle Shanahan really care what Rand Carthon thought? I would just love to know. And not what he says on the record, but like, what did he actually think? You know, some of these guys, they just don't know football. These guys don't know football. I will stand by that. This team is so bad.
For you, Jared. I know, but Jared, I understand that the teams, they've made bad choices, and I understand that the team's bad. We all agree on that. But again, you're talking about their entire lives have been nothing but football. So you're telling me they never talked to anyone, did anything, wrote up a report, watched, like, it's ridiculous.
Let me say this.
It really is.
We've all been on the radio, right? All three of us, and we know people who are on the radio. I am thinking about some people right now that if I said to you guys, hey, does this person know radio? They're on the radio. They've been on the radio, but they don't know radio. And I think football's the same way. And I think there are some people, in fact, I'm going to group text us because I don't want to call anybody out because I'll get in trouble if I do that. But I'm going to group text us, Caroline and Joe, although, Joe, you're talking on the phone, and I really don't know if you'll be able to multitask. But I am texting you a name, and I want you to tell me right now, does this person that I texted you, do they know radio? Caroline, are you looking at it?
Yeah, no.
Okay, but they're on the radio, so they must know radio.
I mean, I don't either. I mean, I just do. I follow the things that are supposed to be done, and some people are good at it, and some aren't.
Some are good.
But Jared, I mean, let's be honest. Like there's a huge difference. And you, to your credit, you are into it on every level, and I respect that. But actually, the radio analogy should make you think of this in a different way. I mean, you're into it. This is your life. You've wanted to do this for a long time. So you pay attention to things. And you know, just because the product, which is still a small sample size of the product, is bad, and we all admit it's bad, for you to take the leap that they don't know football, I mean, it's pretty ridiculous. Like, it really is.
I just said another name.
They're making some bad choices.
I just said another name of somebody that's been in radio for like double the amount of time that I've been. Caroline, does this person, the second person that I sent in, do they know radio?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Caroline, you did radio.
that?
Caroline, you were on the radio for how long? 2 years?
3.
3 years. You think you know radio more than the two people I texted into that group?
I would like to think that I do.
And
I'm not going to toot my own horn,
okay.
but I hope
So
that
let
I
me-
do.
They don't know football.
I would agree. But Caroline, I mean, I know that you can judge us at the end here, but like, how the hell does this apply to what we're talking about? I mean, like,
you can be in it, you can do it, and you cannot know it.
Yeah.
That's my point.
I think that it's a lot different to be able to
pretty
do
flawed.
radio versus do the NFL.
But to know it, you know, like to know it, that you have to know it in order to be a good general manager. You know, like there are a lot of guys that used to play, and Floyd would always say, you know, players don't really know anything other than the thing that they did. And I, again, listened to, you know, one time he and I were talking, and he said, the hardest part of listening to coaches during the draft are, I can listen to the linebacker coach talk about linebackers. What linebacker coaches can't do is when it's like, okay, well, how does this linebacker compare to that guard? Because that's the decision that I have to make. And I think that there's too often where I think that they just sit back there and they're like, well, how did our scouts stack it on the board? Okay, that's how we should take it. And I don't think these guys, that's how you end up taking a guard in the first round. Again, you know, that's an example of them not knowing football. Ian, can we get that Floyd cut? The Floyd cut from, this was like, and I'm sorry for the audio because I recorded this terribly, but I heard it this morning. This was a guy called in. The Titans had 2 picks at the top of the 17 draft. You know, this was in the middle of the season when it looked like the Titans weren't going to be very good. And he asked Floyd what positions the Titans should take with those 2 high picks. Listen to this exchange.
is there any chance, it looks like we're going to have a top 10 pick and a top 5 pick from the Rams. Is there any chance the Titans keep both picks? And if they do, what positions would you be looking at for them for next year? Thanks, guys.
I would be looking at corners. I would be looking at pass rushers, and I would be looking at receivers.
And offensive guards.
And yeah, but I'll get a guard later.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll get a guard later because he knows football. They take a guard with the 11th pick because they don't know football.
Okay, but I mean, we could just, I know we need to, take a break and stuff, but I do think that this last draft right now looks promising. And I've also heard you say, "Oh, Bill Latham looks good. He's a 7th pick." Plenty of people take terrible picks at 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7. Jared, every year there are terrible picks high in the draft.
I
So
know.
you're just going to
DT that doesn't sack the quarterback with the 38th pick.
Okay. But again,
get that later.
so these things, I understand the Skoronski criticism. Again, I'm not really arguing with you on their
And Spears and Sweat.
But again, the entire picture tells you, these guys don't know football.
Yes.
They
The
don't know
entirety
football.
of the picture tells me that they don't know football. More Jared versus Joe to continue next. Jared versus Joe is presented by Pella Windows and Doors of Nashville. Caroline.
Hindsight's 2020. We know that. So now that we have a 7-game sample size of the post Mike Vrabel era, in hindsight, how much of the blame pie are we giving to Mike Vrabel for the 2023 Titans? Joe, we'll start with you.
Man. Well, do I need to come up with? Do I have to come up with a percentage for you, Caroline? Are you needing math here? Are you needing a number here?
I don't need exact numbers, but I think the substance is more important than the number itself.
I mean, look, I don't think there's nothing. I think that there's a lot of people in Nashville who have taken that massive slice and have chopped it down to a little sliver, maybe a little crumb off the crust. And I don't think that's accurate. I think that Vrabel deserves some. I think there's a few things with Vrabel. One is, and here's another thing that I think Jared and I may agree on. I think we've talked about this. I do think that Vrabel may end up being a guy who has a shelf life, like Jared's beloved Peter Laviolette, who certainly his voice has a shelf life, and that's been demonstrated in the NHL. And Vrabel may be kind of similar in the NFL. So was it getting a little old? Was it getting a little stale? I think there was probably something to that. I think he was stubborn with some of his staff hires and holding on to people. Although, by the way, why isn't Jared having every segment screaming Colt Anderson's name? There's a question for him, Caroline. You could ask him. But I also think
I come up with the questions here. Thank you very much.
By the way, I don't have any problem with Colt Anderson anymore. I have a problem with the guy who won't hold him accountable and fire him.
Okay. But, look, I also think that Vrabel, and we can go back to this one, the nothing burger. I 100% believe, and not just speak. Whoever said I 100% believe Vrabel was not trying to insult his boss when he went to New England. However, it was clearly taken that way, and he did not follow up and clear the air, and he did not do a good job of communicating with Amy Adams-Strunk. It was not all on her. I mean, ultimately, the biggest problems of this franchise do come back to the owner, to me. But Vrabel could have handled that better, too, could have handled Rand's hiring in that time better. So all of which is to say he's not blameless. I would give if we're going to do blame pie, I'd give John Robinson still a bigger piece, because 3 straight empty drafts and trading A.J. Brown when Vrabel almost lost his bleep the night they traded A.J. Brown. I got to give more to J-Rob. But Vrabel gets a sizable, healthy piece still. How's that?
So this is a really loaded question. The number one thing I got to ask is, everybody that used to play, everybody that's defending Rand Carthon, the Rand Club, they say that Vrabel was running the team last year. So we blame the guard and the quarterback and the running back in the 3rd round that never plays.
Who says that?
Derek, Chris, and Kevin Dyson.
So they're saying that Vrabel made all the personnel choices himself?
Yeah. So when that Rand gets no blame for last year, and it's all Vrabel.
Yeah, well, that's silly. Now, I did hear D-May say about you that you said Rand wasn't GM last year. He was just playing GM. So now you're trying to put the blame on him. And I think D-May have a point.
No. That was a report. So what I said was that somebody in the building told me, and I think Caroline knows who it is because I think I told her, but somebody in the building told me that Rand plays GM instead of is GM. And what that was to me was kind of he doesn't really do the things that a general manager is supposed to do. As in, he doesn't, he's not available for what things that other general managers have done in the past. And I think that when we saw them put somebody above him to kind of handle the day-to-day operations of the club, I think that's probably a pretty good sign that there may have been something to that. My thing was the Titans didn't tell anybody about anything, and that Vrabel clearly wasn't the GM of the team, because you're reporting, Joe, after Vrabel got fired was Vrabel went to Amy, wanted to be GM, and that pissed Amy off. Which, I mean, if that pissed Amy off, clearly she didn't make him GM.
Well, I think more than that, it was his suggestion that Rand isn't ready to be a GM and should be started as assistant GM. I think that was more angering, but yes.
And if Rand was assistant GM, then you could put the players on Vrabel. But I mean, and the other thing too about this idea that Rand didn't make those picks, like Rand was the one who got mad at the media for asking tough questions about Levis and Spears. If you didn't make those picks, if you were just in the room, would you have gotten upset about that? Probably not. So I have a hard time believing that Rand Carthon didn't pick those players. So when it comes to the blame for last season, I mean, I will tell you, I have a hard time watching Malik Willis play for the Green Bay Packers and thinking to myself, how was that possible based off of what we saw here? Well, Brian Callahan outside of the preseason didn't coach Malik Willis when he was diving back inbounds. Mike Vrabel did. And I think that when we talk about the empty drafts from John Robinson, I do wonder, was Vrabel developing players the best that they could have been developing players over the last couple of years? So I certainly think there's a little element there with Vrabel. I also think if Vrabel would have just been nice, if he would have just played nice, if he would have respected the owner, if he wouldn't have been such an a-hole, I think he'd still be the coach today. And so I have to put that on Vrabel. And then when it comes to the free agency moves, the Andre Dillards and the Aaron Brewers and the Sean Murphy Buntings and all the, the nobodies they went out and signed before the 23 season, I have to wonder, okay, was that Rand saying, oh, Andre Dillard will work? Or was it Amy saying, hey, we're not spending any money this offseason, deal with it. And they had to go scrap at the bargain basement at Walmart. Not that there's anything against that, but I just would prefer it not at left tackle. And I don't know the answer to that either. Because, again, as we all know, the cap is fake, so they could have created space to add more and better players last year. So if we're going with a blame pie, I'll go Vrabel at 20%. I'll go Vrabel at 20%. I'll go Rand at 20%. I'll give John Robinson 25%, and I'll give Amy 35%. So Vrabel's in there. By no means is Vrabel not in the blame of last year, but he's not as high as John and not as high as Amy, and I'd say about equal as Rand.
Lots of agreeing.
Caroline?
It is a lot of agreeing. Okay, Jared, you go first. Will Anthony Richardson be the long-term starter in Indianapolis?
Nah, they've ruined him. I have no idea if Anthony Richardson would have ever been any good. And I would, if I was a general manager, I would have risked my career on it. I would have. Now, again, if I was general manager, we would have had a different plan. We would have run to the podium as soon as we took him, and we would have said, hey, Gardner Minshew is our starting quarterback. If it had been here, we would have said Ryan Tannehill is our starting quarterback, and Anthony Richardson's not playing this year. And don't come ask me, when he's going to get it. He's not getting in there. He's going to sit. I thought Indianapolis, and Ian backed me up, it is documented. You've seen it. Me talking to a former NFL coach about my plan for Indianapolis with Anthony Richardson was to take Richardson and immediately sit him on the bench, install the Jalen Hurts offense, sign Dalton Schultz, the tight end from Dallas, who's now in Houston, sign him to give that young quarterback a tight end he can pitch and catch with, and then give the ball to Jonathan Taylor 85 times. And what did Indy do? None of it. They played him right away. They didn't sign him a tight end. They still have Mo Alley Cox, who is a nobody. They didn't draft him a dynamic receiver in the first round this year. They drafted Latu instead of Brian Thomas Jr., who is the exact receiver Anthony Richardson needs. And they got in a contract dispute right away with Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor played like 3 snaps with Anthony Richardson last year. I mean, that's not setting your pick up for success. That said, I have no idea if Anthony Richardson would have ever been any good if we had run my plan as opposed to theirs. But if you had told me, hey, what do you think of taking Richardson, but with the condition that you have to do what Indy did for him, I would have said, don't take him. So, I mean, I really, really believed in that talent, but I think Indy's ruined him. And it's hard for me not to think that Indy can't ruin a quarterback when they ruined Andrew Luck.
I mean, I hate to say it, Caroline, but I don't even know if I have anything to nitpick in that. I totally agree. They've ruined him. It's a terrible approach to play him at all. That should have been a lock. I mean, when he came out of college. Yes, an incredible prospect, lots of talent. Everybody said he would benefit so much from another year in college football. You don't play him in the NFL. You get him hurt. Now this, I mean, what? It's absolutely bizarre. Like Chris Ballard just loves old quarterbacks, man. I mean, I don't know. It's absolutely bizarre. He'll play again because what's going to happen is they're about to lose a bunch of games because they're playing a tough schedule and they're not good. And Flacco is fine, but they're not going to win. And so Richardson will get back out there this year. But I agree, they've done everything you could possibly do to make it tougher on him. So I can't say yes.
And not only that, too, you brought up, Joe, the idea that everyone was like, hey, man, this is going to be a big project and this is going to be and you're 10 games in. Like,
right.
You're 10 games in. And on top of that, the tap out, Shane Steichen should have, nipped that in the bud. He should have gone right to Richardson before he talked to the press. Hey, we're going to say your ankle flared up. And then the second thing is once Richardson said, hey, I'm not going to lie, I was tired. Remember, Calvin Ridley did that, and Brian Callahan was like, yeah, that wasn't really what – it was hot out there, and these guys, we'll get it figured out. What Steichen should have done is Steichen should have said, look, his ankle flared up on him. He just didn't want to say that he was hurt. That's why he said what he said, but but they're all morons over there in Indy because they don't know football either. And I will say this, Joe. Irsay's been in football a long time. His dad owned the Colts, and I think of Peyton when he told me whatever. Irsay does not know football. Like he does not.
Plenty of owners don't know football. People who spent their lives in film rooms playing the game and scouting the game probably do. But per Jared, so this is at least two organizations in the NFL that you're smarter than. So I'm impressed. How many of the other
3 in the AFC South?
Smarter than? There you go.
And until
You're
Houston,
when are you getting plucked away from the station? I mean, how are we holding on to you? This is what I'd like to know.
And before Houston
before
Houston got rid of their preacher who was running the team, I would have said all 4. Caroline, who wins this week?
Joe, your torn meniscus has made you soft. Whole lot of agreeing today. But I will say, though, that Joe does win today because I cannot say that this organization or the powers that be don't know football.
Oh my
because, Jared, you say all the time
Thank you.
that you can't, when you talk for 4 hours a day, 3 hours a day on a radio show, you can't hide your personality. And yeah, sure, it's really hard to hide your personality on the radio. You can't be inauthentic. So you can be authentic on the radio and still not be good at it. I think that you can know football because I don't think that you can get to this level in the NFL and not know football and fake it.
Thank you.
I think you can know football and just not be very good at it.
Coach
Every
Titans.
point is exactly right.
I watched Ken Whisenhunt coach Titans. I watched the day he got fired, Mike Mularkey come in and say, we're changing that, and that. And they were all simple things. Like instead of a guard at right tackle, he put somebody that could actually play tackle at tackle. I'd argue Ken Whisenhunt doesn't know football. Then again, he was coordinator of a Super Bowl champion, but he doesn't know football.
Right. I'd argue that then Mularkey was a better coach than him. But yes, how could you look at his entire career and say the same thing? You just don't have to take it that far.
Yeah, they don't know
But
football.
you can't help yourself.
They don't know football. They don't know football. They know bullcrap. Guys, thank you so much. Jared versus Joe, presented by Pella Windows and Doors, Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game.
when we brought in Steve McNair, I said it'll take him a couple of years to learn, the offense, what we're going to do. It'll take him a couple of years to learn the league. Then we'll be ready to go. Then we'll be off and running. And he was lucky enough to have, the same offense, the same type system, many of the same coaches and things like that. So that helped.
We told the press that night, we said, now don't come to us every week if we don't win and say, when's McNair going to start? I'm telling you, McNair will not play this year. I said, he'll play a little bit next year, and then we'll go from there. And sure enough, Steve ended up playing like maybe the fourth quarter of a few games and maybe half of a game or whatever.
That was Floyd Reese talking about Steve McNair developing the quarterback. That's somebody that knows football. And I played this cut during Jared versus Joe, but I think it's important. We can all agree. We know football, right? This was a caller in 2016 about the 2017 draft, asking what they should do. And listen to how Floyd feels about taking a guard high in the first round.
Is there any chance, it looks like we're going to have a top 10 pick and a top 5 pick from the Rams. Is there any chance the Titans keep both picks? And if they do, what positions would you be looking at for them for next year? Thanks, guys.
I would be looking at corners. I would be looking at pass rushers, and I would be looking at receivers.
And offensive guards.
And, yeah, but I'll get a guard later.
Yeah, I'll get a guard later. Why? Because it's not important. And people that know ball, like Floyd Reese, know it. People that don't know ball, draft guards with the 11th overall pick. And I just want everybody to know that I feel robbed by Caroline. They don't know football over there. All they do is make the team worse. They're like Butch Jones. Butch Jones, hey, he's coached forever. He must know ball. Butch Jones doesn't know ball. Butch Jones knows catchphrases and how to recruit guys on 24/7 sports, and that's what Butch Jones knows how to do. Tennessee's got a ball coach now. That guy knows football. Jim is up next. Jim, go ahead.
Hey, Jared, love listening to you, man. This is such good radio every day. I will tell you this. I think you're right about these guys not knowing football, but I think if you explain it the way, I think these guys know some aspects of football. Obviously, they've been in the league, they've played in the league, they've been in management in the league. I just think they know aspects of football, but they don't know how to have football acumen, which is strategy, business planning, if you will, around how to put a team together accurately. And like you talk about Floyd, obviously he knew what he was doing. And so he knew how to put a team together and where to put the pieces and when to put the pieces via the draft, free agency, etc. So I think they struggle when it comes to football acumen. I mean, like I said, they have aspects of football that they know well or they know, but I think they just suffer or they don't have football acumen. And I think that really has impacted this team in terms of why they suck so bad.
I mean, to me, we're splitting hairs here. Thank you, Jim. We're splitting hairs here. I mean, it's like, what do you mean doesn't know football? Like, I mean, hey, Rand knows the shape of the ball. He knows it's not round, give him credit. Like at this point, you're like, well, they don't really have the football acumen no. What I'm telling you is like, as far as team building is concerned, they know buzzwords. They know snake oil. But as far as the nitty gritty, hey, well, I'm going to the press today and I'm saying, don't ask me who's going to start. He's going to start a quarterback. That's somebody that knows ball. Somebody that's like, yeah, well, we're not taking a guard with the 11th pick. That's somebody that knows ball. Somebody that trades. The Titans turned down an extra second-round pick to take a run-stuffing DT with the 38th pick who doesn't hit the quarterback because they don't know ball. You go get a run-stuffing DT in free agency every year. You got a guy, Sebastian Joseph Day, can do the same thing. They don't know ball. But what do I know? Because I don't think that I know ball. But what do I know? Ian, should we take it? Okay. So, again, I'm like, I get it. I understand the idea that, like, hey, these guys have worked in football, so they must know something. Yeah, they know the shape of the ball. They know that it's not round. One texter into the text line says, Jared's angry at the Colts because they only gave Richardson 10 games, but Levis having 10 games is enough to say he sucks. That is a double standard. Let me say this. Anthony Richardson was 22 years old, got hurt last year, and was a first-round pick, 4th overall, and not taken after a guard. There is a difference. And I kept talking about this during the offseason. I said, do you treat Will Levis like a first-round pick, even though he wasn't? And Field Yates and ESPN, he said, no. Teams, no matter what you say, teams will be more likely to move off of a second-round pick than they will a first-round pick for whatever reason. But Levis is 25 years old. Levis has run this offense before. Like, I know people are like, well, it's a new offense and a new... It's the West Coast offense. It's the Sean McVay offense. Liam Cohen ran it at Kentucky. It's what Levis ran in college. There's a difference between a 25-year-old quarterback who started more than half the games last year and a 22-year-old who played in 4 games last year and got hurt. Sorry. It's different. One texter says, they don't know football just like you don't know hockey. Ha, 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 Brad. Let me say this. I know radio. That's what I do. When we started Jared and the GM, there's a consultant that we had at the station at the time, Scott Masteller. He's like one of the all-time greats. Guy discovered Colin Cowherd running a station in Portland. Guy knows what he's doing. Guy knows ball as far as radio is concerned. And when we started it, we had a meeting with him. And Floyd said, I just don't know how to do the radio stuff. I know what I know, but I don't know the... And he looked at him, and Masteller did, and he said, well, that's not your job. That's his job. I know radio. I don't know football. I don't know hockey. I'm not qualified to be the general manager of the hockey team. But I still think I could do better than the guys running the football team. That's it for us, Preds Insiders. They're next. We'll see you tomorrow, too.